Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Robert shuddered and entered the dark room. "Come this way, please." The orderly led him down some long corridors. Finally, they found themselves in a light-filled hall. There was a table in the middle, a lifeless body lying on it under a sheet. The young man took a deep breath, trying to cope with the lump of tears in his throat. He couldn't get himself under control. "Are you ready?" The pathologist looked at Robert carefully. "Yes," the man whispered, finally regaining his composure. The orderly pulled back the white sheet, and Robert went pale and swayed, grabbing the edge of the couch. "Is that her?" "It's her, it's Melissa. There's no doubt about it." "Who are you to the deceased?" "Me, I'm her fiancé. We had everything ready for the wedding." "I'm sorry for your loss. She was so young. She should have lived and lived." "Be strong. You've got the most difficult ordeal ahead of you, the funeral." "I can't believe it." In a trembling voice, the grief-stricken man said, "She's gone. Just a few hours ago, I was hugging her, kissing her, and she was laughing. She has an amazing laugh, and now—" He touched his bride's lifeless hand. "Her hand is cold. She will never smile at me again. How can this be?" He clutched his hands to his head, groaned, "To accept such a death. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Though I look at her and see that it is her. Death and Melissa are incompatible. It doesn't make sense. I couldn't imagine in my wildest dreams that this could happen. She loved life so much. God, why? Why did He take her away from me? How happy she and I would have been together. Why is the world so unfair? My darling, how can I be without you? If I had been with you that night, I would have saved you. I would have died, but you would still be alive. But I wasn't there. My darling, my darling?" "Yes," the pathologist sighed. "Too bad about her and the baby. She could have had more children. She's beautiful." "What baby?" The man looked at her, uncomprehending. "You didn't know?" The doctor shrugged. "Your fiancée was pregnant, 8 weeks already." "I'm sorry. This must be hard for you to hear." "Pregnant? What do you mean?" The bereaved groom looked from the orderly to the pathologist, bewildered by the unexpected news. He felt as if he had been knocked out from under his feet. "It can't be. You must have made a mistake. Melissa could not have been pregnant. I would have known. Maybe some other doctor could misdiagnose, but not me." The doctor shook his head. Robert turned pale. "Are you feeling all right?" An orderly asked anxiously, "Why don't I take you outside? Sit here on the bench, get some fresh air, you'll feel better." "I'm sorry for you. So many things all at once on one person's head." "Don't worry, you're young. It'll all work out. Time heals wounds like this. You'll meet a woman. She'll bring you back to life." Yes, I'd better go. I need to be alone." "It's me. It's my fault." Robert followed the orderly, not listening to him, muttering to himself. "If I'd stopped her, if I'd talked her out of going to that damn club, she'd still be alive and I didn't insist. Who could have stopped her, though? I agreed with her on everything. I couldn't say no to anything. Melissa, my Melissa, I'll never forgive myself for this. It's not your fault. No one could have known such a disaster would happen. You couldn't have known there'd be a fire, and you'd better not be alone now. Is there someone to take care of you?" The orderly asked kindly, opening the door for him, but the young man did not hear him. He was grieving. "My beloved Melissa is gone. How can I live? How can I live?" Robert wandered down the alley, seeing nothing in front of him, walking and muttering to himself under his nose like a madman. My Melissa, my girl, how will I live without you? Why? Why did you leave? I didn't keep you safe. I didn't stop you. If you'd listened to me, you'd still be alive. Honey, Melissa was fidgeting in front of the mirror, picking out an outfit. Look, what dress do you think I should wear? Her cell phone beeped subtly. Hello? Don't distract me. If you keep calling every 5 minutes, I'll never get out. The girl cheerfully spoke into the receiver. I can't decide on a dress. She complained. How impatient you are. I'll be there soon. Melissa threw the phone on the bed. Kitty, help me comprehend the zipper. How do I look? Fuck this club. Robert frowned, glancing at her unhappily. It was a night to be alone together for once. We haven't seen much of each other these days. You spend more time with your friends than you do with me. I don't like it. You're my fiancé. The phone screen flashed again. Melissa grabbed it, quickly read the message, smiled. You're not listening to me at all. Your friends are more precious to you than me. Don't be angry, Kitty. The girl jokingly kissed him on the tip of his nose. I want to dance tonight, but you can't get me to go to a club. What now? To sit at home like two pensioners and stare at each other. It's not for me. You and I have a lot of nights like this ahead of us, so you'll get tired of me. I'll never get tired of you. Can we go to a movie or just sit at home and talk? You? Why a movie? Melissa wrinkled her nose. We're not 18 years old. Tell me about sitting in the back row and kissing. What's wrong with that? But together, it's very romantic. And then we'd get in the car and drive around the city all night. No offense, but we've already arranged to meet the girls. Oh, here we go. The girl grabbed the phone again. There they are again. Yes, I'll be down in 10 minutes. Melissa laughed impatiently. Wait for it. Honey, look at me. How do I look? You're not going anywhere. Robert stood in the doorway. I don't want you to go with them. We're getting married soon, and you're always running away from me. I don't want to share you with anyone. I want to be with you every minute of every day. I don't know what's so appealing about a dark, smoky room with music blaring. And it's full of strange men, and I don't want them slapping you. Don't be mad. Melissa fixed her luxurious brown hair. It doesn't suit you, and besides, you're not my husband yet. She poked him in the stomach with her finger. Look, I might change my mind if you're going to keep restricting my freedom. Just kidding. She smiled sweetly at her lover. Don't be possessive. What can I do if I'm not a homebody? Do you want me to sit at home, knitting socks in the evenings? You must admit, it's very boring. And anyway, I'd like to go out a little before the wedding. Then I promise I'll only be around you. I'm all yours now, but I don't want to give up my friends either. Don't be a nuisance. She gently pressed her whole body against him. Don't keep me here, or my friends will come for me. You don't want them to make a fuss, do you? Please don't go. I missed you. I haven't seen you all day. I wanted to spend the evening with you. Why don't I cook dinner, or we can order in, and then we can sit together. Open a bottle of wine. The whole night is ours. I miss you too, my love. She gave him a quick kiss and deftly slipped past him to the exit. I feel like dancing for tonight. Her cell phone buzzed. Here's the message again. I'm already expected. Without stopping me. Throw the phone away. He tried to take it away from the girl. You're always talking to someone, texting. You don't care about me, and I'm your fiancé, your husband. I'm aware of that, kitten. Don't spoil my mood. Don't disappoint me. I promise it'll be the last time. Bye, honey. She sent him a kiss from the doorway. I won't be long. I'll be back before you know it. You and I have a lot of nights ahead of us. I love you. I'll be back soon. Finally met Melissa's friends right outside the club. We thought you'd never come. You're already struggling to get out of your fiance's arms now. But what happens when you're married? Will he make you stay home? It would be fun to imagine Melissa as a model mother and wife. That's hilarious. Melissa, I would love to see this picture. Can I be your firstborn's godmother? Melissa, can you cook? I'd pay a lot to see you at the kitchen table. I hope your husband dies of old age and not poisoning himself at one of the family dinners. A model wife in an apron and a frying pan in her hand. Laugh, though your jokes are inappropriate. Everything will be just the way I want it. The pretty girl replied haughtily. Robert loves me, so I have no inhibitions in our house. Why are we standing here? Let's dance. Melissa, you look amazing in that dress. Admiringly looking at her, Mason said, and me. Pouted her lips offensively, his friend Helen. And you, of course. Gently kissing her on the top of her head, reassured the young man. I'm a polite man, just had to compliment your friend. I suggest having a glass of cocktail. Melissa moved to the beat of the music. The mirror ball under the ceiling cast a glare on the dancers. The mood was perfect. For the mood, we don't mind, replied the young people and rushed to the bar. And the groom won't say anything to you? He's sitting alone at home, and you're having fun with us, and suddenly he'll get a great idea to come here. Helen took a sip, then another. Helen, Robert is the kind of man who prefers the comforts of home to the fun of the club, so I have nothing to fear. And then he realizes I'm not drinking juice here, so don't attack him. He's a good man and he loves me, and that's worth a lot, and he doesn't ask for anything in return. You'll run away from him in a week. My friend remarked, he's boring and all right. Do you really like the prospect of living with him for the rest of your life? Stop. Stop all this talk about my fiancé. Tonight we're gonna have a lot of fun. Great music. Her supple body picked up the rhythm with pleasure. Melissa gave herself over to the dance, oblivious to her surroundings. I'm tired, Helen said. Let's sit down for a while, shall we? The company sat down at the table on cozy leather sofas. You guys are so cool. Mason looked at one girl and the other with a smile. You don't drink anything at all. Should I suggest some other cocktail? 'Cause I'm supposed to be as smooth as a whistle. My baby, Robert, will be mad at me if I come home too tipsy. She looked playfully at her date, Michael. And I don't need that before the wedding. Shall we go dancing then? The man suggested. Both couples stepped onto the dance floor and moved to the music. You're so hot. Pulling her close to him, Michael said. You're a lot of fun, but I'm looking forward to more. You wouldn't deny me the pleasure of kissing you somewhere in a private corner of this room, would you? Careful. Melissa laughed, tilting her head back to get a better look at her companion. I'm married without 5 minutes. So what? The man's eyes reflected desire and admiration for the girl. Today your fiancé is not around, and you are mine for this evening. Isn't that right? I dreamed to take off this dress, to feel under my palms your silky skin. You want that too, don't you? Admit it, I can see you're trembling with impatience. Yes, I want to relax tonight. She tilted her head and laughed. She was dizzy from the cocktail she'd drunk. The music hanging in the air, the tobacco smoke, the hall lights, everything created a cheerful atmosphere. Listen, suddenly the girl stopped and looked around warily. Don't you think it smells like burning? I think so. Her companion laughed and tried to kiss his partner. It's time for a drink. Come on, our friends have been waiting for us. We should take a break. Can't you smell burning plastic? You're just imagining it. Look, everyone's dancing, and nobody notices. Don't panic. If something happened, they'd have raised the alarm long ago. Don't be a bore. Let's go to ours. I feel so good with you now. Melissa, now and then looking around, followed Michael. Anxiety did not let her go. We thought you weren't coming back. Helen pouted her lips resentfully. It's not fair to your friends. Don't disappear for too long. We're already here with you. Michael kissed her on the cheek. Melissa feels like something is burning somewhere. You shouldn't laugh. The girl furrowed her brow in concern. It really smells like something. Can't you smell it? Don't make it up. The man handed her a glass with a cocktail. Drink, relax. They impatiently drained the glasses. Now come with me. There's something we need to discuss. He glanced meaningfully at his buddies, picked up his companion, and headed out of the hall, looking for a place of privacy. I don't understand. Helen stared after the couple. What was Melissa thinking? She's about to get married, and she's out with someone else. And she's not afraid that Robert will tell about her adventures. She's desperate. I feel sorry for her fiancé. He'll have a lot of grief for her. None of your business. She's got her own head on her shoulders. That's what Mason said. I hope you're not going to tell Robert about Melissa. He sniffed uneasily. Hey, it does smell like burning. Shouldn't we be getting some fresh air? Suddenly the lights blinked. Once. The music stopped, and the hall became dark. Visitors began to light flashlights in their phones. Someone took a lighter in his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, a cheerful voice of a DJ sounded among the darkness. Please remain calm. A little trouble. But don't forget that darkness is the friend of youth. The room erupted in laughter. Have a blast. In just a few minutes, we will restore the club. At that moment, something sparked at the far end of the hall. Then small flames burst out of the darkness. They flickered once, twice, and then disappeared as if nothing had happened. There was silence in the hall. People froze, as if in a hypothetical dream, waiting for what would happen next. A few minutes later, as if by magic, the flames appeared again, and they immediately skidded on the ceiling, on the drapes, quickly spreading through the hall, covering more and more territory with fire. Thick, poisonous smoke, then more and more confidently began to spread in the air. Burn! There was a scream, and people rushed towards the exit. Please don't panic. The DJ exhorted into the microphone. Try to stay calm. Don't create a crowd. Don't block the aisles. Everything is under control. There's no cause for alarm. We're all going to go outside now. Don't crowd at the entrance. Club officials are doing everything they can to stop the fire. But the crowd didn't listen to him, sweeping away tables and chairs. People rushed for the exits. The word fire was like a trigger. Pushing, shouting people rushed into the street, dropping each other, trampling the feet of the unfortunate who, unable to hold on, fell at the feet of the panic-stricken crowd. Disregarding their cries for help, the club-goers were trying to get to the emergency exit. Please don't leave me. Let me out, let me out. The voices, gripped by fear and pain, rang out. Don't push. Don't block the entrance. You scoundrel, you hit me. Help me. I can't breathe. Do something. The people, mad with fear, tried to escape from the trap they were in. And the fire was spreading faster and faster by the minute. It licked the ceiling with its flaming tongue. Hot drops of red-hot plastic dripped down from it onto the heads of the panic-stricken clubgoers. Screams and moans came from all sides. Melissa, cried Helen. Where are you? Mason, they're nowhere. What can we do? We have to save ourselves. Don't slow down, or they'll crush us. I can't leave Melissa here. We have to find them. Are you crazy? How will you find them now? The fire's getting closer and closer to the exit. It's gonna burn with all its might. If we don't get out in time, we'll burn alive. Is that what you want? What do we do? Melissa is a close friend of mine. What if they can't get out? Look at this. It's pandemonium. You know, honey, in a situation like this, it's every man for himself. She's not alone, Michael's with her. Maybe they're already outside. Don't stop, I'm begging you. Smearing soot-stained tears on her cheeks, Helen said. They had already gotten out. There must be an emergency exit where they were going. You're right, we should get out ourselves. With Melissa, Michael, she's not alone. Together they won't get lost. Hold on to me. It's only a little while, and we'll be out of here. If we try to go back into the hall now, we'll be swept away, trampled. We have to follow the crowd. Michael will be able to save Melissa. You better take care of yourself. Obeying the flood of people, the young men made their way out. Mason coughed as he breathed in the fresh air. They're gone, Mason. Looking around in horror, Helen exclaimed. They stayed there. They're going to die. What are we going to do? Why do you worry about them? The young man waved his hand. The main thing is that we got out. The firemen and ambulance have already arrived. They will save them. Now just wait and do not interfere. Calm down. Nothing can be changed. Don't punish yourself. Helen sobbed on the man's chest. They are there. Choking on her tears, she shouted. They are still there. Melissa, we should have at least tried to help them. Why? Why did you stop me? There was the sound of breaking glass. Flames burst from the windows. Black clouds of acrid smoke rising to the sky. Everybody get away from the building. A sonorous voice came through the megaphone. Those who need medical help, come to the ambulances. Step away from the doors. Don't block the way. Let the firemen work in peace. In front of frightened people, rescuers unfolded hoses and began to extinguish the fire. The victims were taken out of the room and sent straight to hospitals in the city. That's not her. Helen rushed like mad to one ambulance and another, hoping to find her friend. She's nowhere to be found. Do you realize she stayed there? I asked you to come back. We could have saved them. We wouldn't have saved them. Mason justified himself. How could we find them in the dark? And you were dead. Who would have been relieved? I'll never forgive myself for my cowardice. I wish I had died with them. What makes you think they're dead? They'll be found and rescued. Look, they're bringing out the living. Can't you see the fire raging inside? No one could survive in there. Jesus, how are we going to tell Robert that Melissa died? I dread to think what will happen to him. It's none of our business. Let the police handle it. Let's go home. I'm tired. I want to wash up and go to bed. You can't help them now. How can you think about it? Poor Melissa, to die just before the wedding. Why do we have to go to the club tonight? Please don't split up. The voice on the megaphone has come through again. It is necessary to clarify the number of injured and dead. If you can't find those who were with you at the club, please approach the police officers and give information about the missing. We have to do that. Helen pulled Mason with her. Do you have any idea what Robert's going through right now? He's waiting for Melissa to come home, and she's gone. We have to report her, at least this last little thing we have to do for them. You do as you wish, but I'm going to the police. The young men headed for the Temporary Information Collection Center. Finally, Mason managed to convince Helen to go home. Robert could not sleep a wink until morning. Anxiety was growing in his soul. Why had Melissa turned off the phone? He wondered. She should have been back long ago. What could have happened? Where to look for her now? Should Helen call? What if Melissa decided to stay the night? She didn't want to wake me up. With shaky hands, I dialed the girl's phone number, but her cell phone was unavailable. Where are they all? Should I call the police or wait? The man couldn't find a place. Time passed, and his beloved never appeared. He did not notice how tired of waiting he fell asleep. It seemed to him that he only closed his eyes for a second, and then he was startled by a sudden phone call. "Robert?" He heard an unfamiliar voice in the receiver. "Hello. I am compelled to inform you that your fiancée, Melissa, was killed in a nightclub fire. We're very sorry for your loss." "How did she die?" "A man stood in the middle of the room and couldn't move. This can't be happening. She can't be dead. We're about to get married." "What happened?" "You must have made a mistake. It's not her." "I'm sorry, but it's true. It was a tip from some friends she was out with that night." The electrical wiring in the club caught fire. The fire spread quickly. People panicked. Your fiancée couldn't get out of the room. Her buddies confirmed she was definitely there. You'll have to come down for a lineup. I know it's a difficult procedure, but we need your testimony." "I don't believe it." Stunned, staring at the blacked-out screen, Robert said, "She can't be dead. It's not true." "What about our wedding? No, it can't be. They were wrong. These people are definitely wrong. I'll go right now and prove it wasn't Melissa. She was just playing a joke." He fidgeted, getting ready. His head was buzzing, his thoughts jumbled. The man could hardly understand what was going on. Half an hour later, he was already standing in front of the medical examiner's office. After gathering his courage, he pulled the heavy door open. "It's good that they came at once." The pathologist looked sympathetically at Robert. "We'll get her back to you as soon as possible." "Maybe it's not my fiancée." Robert looked pleadingly at the man. "That's why we asked you here. You must be absolutely certain that this is your fiancée." "Ready? I'll get it. Do you need any help?" Robert shook his head negatively, pulled himself together, and looked at the body. Melissa's head was resting on the couch on top of a white sheet. Hair burned in places, no blood in her face. "Ah!" Robert groaned in pain, closed his eyes. His fingers clenched into a fist of their own accord. "Is this Melissa, your fiancée? Do you recognize her?" "Yes, that's her." The young man barely spoke. He refused to believe that Melissa, his adored Melissa, was lying immovably before him. Her face was a grimace of horror and pain. "My condolences." The pathologist was silent. "I think you should know that your fiancée was drunk, so she couldn't get off the premises. And also," he stopped talking again, "she was pregnant." "Pregnant how?" Robert was confused. "She didn't say anything." "Probably didn't have time." The lost young man headed for his car. He hardly realized what was happening. The most difficult ordeal lay ahead of him. All their friends and family had gathered for the funeral. Robert refused to believe that Melissa was gone. The farewell ceremony passed as if in a dream. Already at the wake, when almost everyone had left, Helen sat down with him. "Robert," the girl sympathetically squeezed his hand, "I'm sorry about what happened. I am to blame for Melissa's death." The young man did not hesitate to cry. "If I had persuaded her not to go to the club, she would still be alive. It was hard to change her mind about anything." Helen grinned sadly. She was a good friend. "And a bad bride." Mason remarked. "He was a little drunk. You didn't know everything about her. Friend, something she kept from you." "Don't you dare." The girl gave her buddy a warning look. "She's gone. Don't bring up the past. Let her remain in Robert's memory, cheerful, loving." "I will not hide the truth from him," Mason said stubbornly. "Robert, you must know I have no right to be silent. It is very hard for me to see you suffer. She was unworthy of your love. She is not a woman to suffer for. What are you saying? She was the best woman, tiredly objected the serene young man. And now she's gone. I can't imagine life without her. She was everything to me. I'm dead, crushed, ruined. I don't want to live. She wasn't faithful to you. There at the club, Melissa was with another man. She cheated on you all the time. She cheated on you just before the wedding. That fateful night, she was seeing another man. You're lying. Robert's eyes are bloodshot. You have no right to besmirch my fiancé's good name. She loved me. Melissa never cheated on me. Why? Why do you say such a disgusting thing? My poor girl. She can't even contradict you. Robert, calm down. Helen tried to stop him. And you shut up. She went after Mason. Can't you find another time for this kind of news? Can't you see the state he's in? You're hurting him. Let him find out now, and from us, the police will tell him anyway. Robert and Melissa died because she and Michael were drunk and making love somewhere in the back of the club. That's why they couldn't get out. When the lights went out, there was panic. We had no chance of finding them. You know, in a situation like this, it's better to move with the crowd, especially since we were expecting to see them on the street. I don't believe a word of it. Robert looked at Mason with unseeing eyes. Melissa couldn't cheat on me. I don't know why you're trying to defame her, but for God's sake, shut up. I don't want to hear this filth. You're lying. You've always been jealous of our love for her. Of course, this is the right moment to talk trash about my Melissa, but you won't succeed. Understand. I'll never believe she went behind my back to see another man. She was pregnant. We were going to have a baby. She didn't have time to tell me. How hard it is for me to know that I will never be able to kiss my beloved Melissa again, never hold our baby in my arms. I'm alone without her. I don't know why I'm still alive. It's not your baby. Helen said sadly. I'm sorry you're just finding out now. You too. Robert exclaimed sadly. She was your friend. She trusted you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business. Helen objected. Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men. Why are you telling me all this now? Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. Get out of our house, he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. I don't want to see you again ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that. Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. I thought you needed to know the truth. And you asked me if I wanted to know it now. He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. Robert, we understand you're not yourself and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you. Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. Son, his mother came over to him. What's wrong? Why did your friends leave? Leave me alone, Mom. Deeply, said the young man. I want to be alone. I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I could do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations," Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like, a real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief? Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you? Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business." Helen objected. "Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men." "Why are you telling me all this now?" Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. "Get out of our house," he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. "I don't want to see you again, ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that." Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. "I thought you needed to know the truth, and you asked me if I wanted to know it now." He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. "Robert, we understand you're not yourself, and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you." Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. "Son," his mother came over to him. "What's wrong? Why did your friends leave?" "Leave me alone, Mom," deeply said the young man. "I want to be alone." "I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I can do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations!" Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like. A real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief?" "Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you?" "Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you." "Son, I realize the pain of loss is still fresh, but it's been a year since Melissa died. You can't keep to yourself. Hasn't the discovery of her death made you forget about her? Is she the kind of woman you should suffer so much for? I don't believe you've forgiven her yet." "Yes, Mother. If she were still alive, I'd forgive her for everything." "Jesus, Robert, you can't be so sad. Melissa's gone, but you're a living person. Life didn't end with her death. I'm sure you'll meet another good girl, and you'll love her. You deserve to be happy, and happiness walks after you. It's only worth a good look. What are you up to, Mom? Are you up to your old tricks again? Who is it this time?" "I'm not going to meet anyone. I'm sick and tired of your indomitable desire to marry me. Leave me alone for a while. Son, you're still young. You can't behave like a monk. Of course, I like that you're giving your all to your work. I'm glad that this zeal has had a positive effect on your career, but you can't do that. We want to see you happy again, and you're burying yourself alive. Yeah, and you've set your sights on marrying me. I thought you were kidding about the matchmaking. What kind of joke is that? You're a man, you're the next of kin. Look around you, you're surrounded by so many beautiful girls. Among the string of my potential brides, whom you invented to invite regularly to our house, I have not met a single one who could overshadow in my heart the image of Melissa. Incidentally, they all agreed that they wanted nothing to do with me. I'm glad they realize that now, and not at the wedding you would have surely played for us. Don't you ever think of giving me your consent to marry you. You are insufferable," Mother exclaimed in her heart. "No woman will not tolerate to be compared with another, especially with the one who is no longer alive. And my father and I just dream of marrying you. Oh, what beauties have been in our house. If I were younger," William smiled dreamily, "it's not about you, it's about our son." His mother sternly reprimanded him. "We didn't tell you that Jennifer is traveling with us, along with her parents. I think this girl is attracted to you. At least she didn't refuse to keep us company." "Why?" Father remarked enthusiastically. "It's not a bad option. She's a docile, quiet girl, and she'll make a good wife. With your character, you cannot choose. Too docile, or rather indifferent to everything." Robert sighed. "I don't think she cares whether I propose or not. I'm sure you're wrong. We parents are looking forward to you getting married. It'll be very romantic if you're on the boat, proposing to her, huh? Son, think about it. Jennifer's a very nice girl. You take a good look at her. Of course, she loses out to Melissa in looks. She was too flamboyant, too flashy, too gorgeous, too vampy, and Jennifer's different. But maybe that's the safe haven you need right now. Maybe your heartbreak will heal with her around. I'm not going to marry anyone. I don't understand why all this is happening. I'm fine on my own. I hardly know this Jennifer of yours. I don't know her, but she's a very quiet woman. Who knows what she's up to? You'll have a good chance to get to know her on the boat. Son, I can see you like her too. Don't make it up, Mom. I hardly recognize her in a crowd. And you can't get to know a person properly in 2 weeks. Let's not guess. Let's take a trip and see what happens. Don't deny it. You'll have to think about marriage and a bride sometime. Let it be Jennifer. Son, William put a hand on his shoulder. We're not forever, and we need to know that you won't be alone. We still have grandchildren to look forward to. And look at the girl. She's the right one, and she won't betray you, not like your Melissa. Father. Clara looked at him reproachfully. Don't hurt the wound. And you, Robert, think carefully before you refuse. All right, have it your way. The young man waved his hand. Well done. That's a good girl. You'll thank us at the end of the trip. A week later, Robert stood on the deck of a pleasure boat and watched the shore moving away. Robert, entering the cabin, demanded his mother. Let's go to dinner. Stop staring at your laptop. Jennifer's parents invited us. I really hope that if not today, then tomorrow you will surely propose to her. Mom? Robert begged, leave me alone. Here I am, sitting in my cabin, not touching anyone working. If you want this wedding so badly, make your own arrangements. I don't want any part of it. You've already made up your mind without my involvement. Keep doing what you're doing. One thing I can promise, if I can't avoid the wedding, I'll try to attend it in person. You're joking already. That's a good sign. It means recovery is just around the corner. My boy will take care of the wedding preparations, you bet. But the marriage proposal will have to be yours. Quit your job. We're waiting for you at the restaurant. Okay, Mom. My son sighed. I'll be there as long as it's over quickly. Good for you. True, everything is just beginning, but this is already details. I will not scare you. Promise me you won't take too long to propose. Clara walked away, leaving Robert in deep thought. He didn't want to go anywhere, but he realized that he couldn't avoid the dinners together. Without desire, Robert packed up and went to the meeting. The young people were assembled. The parents greeted him with cheers of joy. We never thought we'd see you today. Look how much fun. William nodded his head toward the deck, where the passengers were dancing. The organizers were holding some kind of contest. Jack and I have decided to join the dancing group. Our ladies refuse, and we're not going to sit still. Right, Jack? That's right. Jennifer's father agreed. But are we here to eat or sleep? We've got to have fun. Why don't we leave the young people alone? Suggested Doris, Jennifer's mom. And we'll have some old times' sake. The young people were left alone. Jennifer was staring off into the distance. Jennifer? Robert spoke. How do you feel about our parents wanting us to get married? I don't know, she shrugged. I'm going to have to get married someday anyway. Why not do it now? Your candidacy suits me fine. You saying that as if it doesn't matter to you who will be your husband. Why not? I'm not that cynical. You're really not the worst option. So you'd be willing to be my wife. Why not? She shrugged her thin shoulders again. Robert was surprised that Jennifer didn't try to make him feel comfortable. She didn't look at him at all, turning her brown eyes away from him. Outwardly, she seemed very calm, but her inner tension was revealed only by her fingers tightly locked together, the occasional twitching of her lips, and a pale face that had not a speck of blood on it. "Don't you want to know how I feel about you?" "Why should I? If even we are to be married, playing a couple in love is not at all necessary. Family life is stronger when it's built on mutual respect. Passion will fade over the years, but respect will remain. Isn't that right?" Meanwhile, the parents are back. "Oh, the kids." Trying to regain her breath, Clara said, "You should have come with us, the host of the evening, a real professional." "Exactly." Doris supported her. "I've never been in such contests. I'm tired of laughing." "And Jack and I," William remarked, "had a great time dancing. It's been a long time since I've had such a good time at a disco. I remember being a daredevil in my youth. Even now, you're a young man's man, too." The wife laughed. "If you don't mind." Robert got up from his chair. "I'll go to my room. I've had enough impressions for today. Good night." He was escorted away in silence. "Jennifer," Doris asked anxiously, "what happened between you two? Did he hurt you?" "And we had hoped that everything had worked out," Clara said disappointedly. "Nothing like you were expecting. We just talked for a while. And I think I'll leave you too." In the morning, everyone gathered for breakfast. The parents were discussing last night's party, and the young people were silent. "Parents," Robert spoke, "I realize that you are expecting Jennifer and me to make a very important decision for both families." He took a small box out of his pocket and opened it. "Jennifer, marry me." "Robert." The mother gasped. She looked at Doris with moist eyes. Had it really come to pass? "Son, how happy we are all for you." How I longed for my little girl to find happiness. Doris opened her arms towards Clara. Both women hugged each other warmly, and the men shook hands. But Jennifer said nothing to me. Robert inquisitively looked at the girl. "I agree." In a colorless voice, she answered, "Kids, my God, we're going to have such a wedding now." The parents laughed, congratulating each other. Fathers hugged Robert, mothers kissed their children and each other. "Oh, what a life we'll have now." Robert and Jennifer watched in silence as their parents rejoiced for them. "Doris," Clara looked worriedly at her future sister-in-law, "we're not going to put the wedding on hold, are we?" "Of course," she agreed. "There's nothing to think about. We should immediately start preparing for the wedding. The proverbial 3 months will not wait. I think a month is enough to send out invitations and book tables in the restaurant." The young people watched the scene blankly. It seemed to Robert that Jennifer was not interested in the wedding. She didn't take part in the conversation between the parents. She was thinking somewhere far away from the boat. "Jennifer?" Her mother addressed her. "What kind of dress would you like for the wedding?" "I just ordered a catalog, and there's such a good selection to choose from." "I don't know." The girl shrugged indifferently. "What's the difference? You can do without a dress. Buy an ordinary one. What's the use of this dress? It will be dusty somewhere in the attic." "You're wrong, daughter. A dress is a symbol of family prosperity. Show it to your daughter later." "Well, pick one for me. Whichever one you think suits me, I'll wear." "You know, Mom, I don't know about fashion. I rely on your taste." "That's what we'll do." Doris rejoiced, and with enthusiasm, began to discuss with Clara the style of the bride's dress. "To tell you the truth, I've already looked at something, even taken a photo. Can you tell me which one would suit my daughter better?" "Why did she agree to marry me?" perplexed Robert, watching the new bride. It's clear to the naked eye that she has no feelings for me. Usually girls are happy to propose marriage, and this one, it seems that and just lazy was just lazy to refuse me. What if? Suddenly a hunch struck him. Behind the ostensible indifference she hides fear. But what could she be afraid of? It's strange, and Jennifer's acting strange. But I don't like the whole wedding thing either, and in that we're alike. He grinned sadly. At least we have something in common. I'm sorry. He got up from the table. I'm a little tired. I'll go to my quarters and do a little work for the night. But how could you, son? The mother was confused. I think you should do the wedding preparations too. It's your party after all. We should think about who to take as a witness. Mommy, he kissed her gently on the cheek. I'm sure you'll do just fine without me. And you'll do the wedding in the best possible way. I trust you completely. You can appoint your own witnesses. I won't have any objections. The parents looked at each other in silence, but did not object. In the morning, Clara walked resolutely into her son's cabin. Robert, you're being disgusting, she declared from the doorstep. Intelligent people do not behave like this. You are disrespecting not only our parents, but also your fiancé. What happened this time? Sighing heavily, the young man regretfully broke away from his work. I think I did everything you wanted me to do. Can I be alone for a while? I have some urgent work to do. Your work can wait, but your fiancé can't wait. How can you sit here when Jennifer's bored out on the deck? You didn't show up for breakfast. You're sitting there like an owl. You've got your head full of work. We said we were going on vacation. What do you need me for? You're all having a good time without me. What do you want from me? I don't interfere with anyone. I agree with everything. I'm decent. Are you putting a price on yourself? Have you forgotten how to woo a girl? You're a young man. Don't you want to flirt a little? Mom, in your scenario of my marriage, there was no wooing of the bride. I did more than that. I asked you to marry me. Are you kidding me? The woman was offended. We arrange your personal life, and you ungrateful, laughing at us. I didn't expect it. All my heart ached for you so shortly, and to heart attack to live, and he still laughs. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Robert jokingly put his hands in the air. I give up. You can't resist such ironclad arguments. I'll be on deck in a few minutes. Believe me, I'm very grateful to you and Dad for taking care of me. In case you haven't noticed, I'm all grown up and I'm not jumping up and down on one leg. I still love you parents. Oh, son, what has this tragedy done to you? Even the humor turned black. The mother left, shaking her head. The young man quickly changed his clothes. What am I going to talk to Jennifer about? He thought, she shows no interest in me. Does she want this wedding or not? I don't know how to start a conversation. Okay, I'll figure it out on the spot. I'll see if I can get her to like me. She doesn't seem very talkative. Jennifer, her parents, and Robert's parents are all seated in cozy chairs on the deck. Jennifer? Doris cheered. Here comes Robert. Take a walk. It's a beautiful morning. You'll be distracted. It will do you both good. Jennifer was silent, put down the book she was reading, and stood up. Do you mind going for a walk? Asked the young man. The girl nodded silently. They walked along the deck of the motor ship. The wind was developing Jennifer's dark hair. She tossed it back every now and then. I see. Robert was the first to speak, when they were far enough away from their parents. You're not thrilled about the idea of getting married either, are you? I should warn you right away. Without waiting for an answer, the young man continued. I don't love you. My heart is still in love with Melissa, and I'm not going to change my attitude toward life anytime soon. I only agreed to the wedding for my parents. You're the least of the evils my parents offered me in the form of a string of suitors for my heart. If that's the kind of relationship you're comfortable with, I'm fine with it, Jennifer said quietly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. You're the candidate, is it? Robert was surprised. Yeah. Jennifer agreed. I'm sick of my parents, too. I know you're indifferent to me, so you won't qualify for anything. In turn, I won't bother you with my problems either. We'll live our lives as we used to. We'll have a perfect family. Almost nothing will change except the stamp in the passport. You spend most of your time at work. I'll also work, but I promise to be able to create a home cozy. I'm a good cook, by the way. I don't need money for maintenance. I earn good money myself. But why do you need me? He couldn't understand how she could be so calculating. You can meet true love and find your happiness, and if it happens after our marriage, and you meet a man you love with all your heart, we'll have to divorce. I'm fine with that. Jennifer shrugged. Don't worry, I won't be interested in anyone else. I know how to be faithful. You won't have to fight off my suitors. I promise you that. So you're marrying me on purpose? If that's what you think, then that's what it is. Explain it to me. Robert grabbed Jennifer's arm and turned her around. Why do you agree with everything? It's my nature. She didn't even try to get out of his arms. She just squirmed, not knowing what to expect from her fiancé. I'm used to agreeing to everything, and I like solitude as much as you do. That's why we'll be good together. We won't interfere with each other. But that's not right. Robert shook her gently, trying to meet her gaze, but she avoided looking at him. You're young, you're beautiful, you must dream of love. All girls think about it sooner or later. You're hurting me. The young man loosened his grip. Jennifer freed himself from his arms. Let's just stand and look at the sea, shall we? See. She stretched her hand out into the distance. Dolphins always dreamed of seeing them. They stood in silence for a long time, looking at the sea. Already in the evening, alone in the cabin, Robert could not sleep. The conversation with Jennifer did not go out of his head. She was strange, he thought, lying with his eyes open. She wasn't interested in what her parents had come up with for the wedding. She didn't ask what guests would be there. She didn't even argue with the candidate of the witness. For the first time I see such a girl. Why does she behave like this? What is she hiding? Jennifer intrigued him more and more. On the third day, in the evening, he himself invited her to go out. Her parents looked at each other meaningfully, smiling happily. You don't have to study me at all. Jennifer remarked, I feel fine with a book in my hands. We don't owe each other anything. It's a lovely evening. I don't feel like sitting in the cabin. Robert was quiet for a while. I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, but I've never had the chance. I remember you and Melissa were good friends. You know the truth, don't you? I know some things, of course, but I'd like to hear Melissa's story from you. I suddenly realized I could trust you. Tell me everything you know about her. I don't know anything, she protested. She didn't tell me much, and we weren't really close friends. She liked to have fun, and I preferred to spend my evenings at home and work a lot. I think you do. Robert insisted, but you don't want to tell me so as not to upset me. I really need to know the truth. This year I lived as if in a dream. I didn't want to see or hear anyone. I experienced everything in myself. I tried to forget and could not accept the loss and the fact that Melissa was not alone on that tragic day. I didn't want to believe that she was lying to me. I didn't want to talk about it. Jennifer had withdrawn into herself again, withdrawn as if she had hung a barn lock on the door of her soul. Robert groaned with frustration, slammed his fist against the rail of the boat. Of course, it was rolling around in his head. She won't say anything, she'll keep quiet, and I'll never know anything. How hard is it to live in ignorance? But she surprised him. I know. Jennifer suddenly spoke. But Melissa has been gone for a year and a half. It's all in the past. Why reopen it? I need to know the truth. I beg you, tell me everything you know. I don't think you'll like what you're asking me. I don't think it will make you feel any better. And then she got quiet. After what you hear, I don't think you and I are going to work out. But why? If you were in my shoes, wouldn't you want to know the truth? He asked. I suppose I would at first, but then, now I'd give anything not to know. You don't know what you're asking me to do. Jennifer, please. Robert begged. Don't bore my soul. There hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about Melissa. I still can't believe she cheated on me. Somehow I trust you, and I know that you won't lie to me, that you'll tell me the truth. Even if I don't like the truth, I have to know it. No. Jennifer suddenly stood up. Not now. I'm tired and I want to go to my room. Don't torture me with questions. It's hard for me to remember. Jennifer, imagine how I've lived these last year and a half. I wake up thinking about why she went to the club that night. Who was that man? What attracted her to him? I fall asleep and torture myself with thoughts that I too am to blame for her death. Maybe I said or did something wrong. And I'm tired as hell, torturing my heart with questions, with no hope of an answer. If you can explain what was going on behind my back, help me. I'd do anything for you to get answers to my questions. Jennifer, I swear to you that nothing will change between us. Unfortunately, my confession will change everything. The girl looked at him sadly. Are you hoping I'll tell you the truth and it will ease your pain? I assure you it won't. Is it really that important to know whether Melissa cheated on you or not? Robert nodded silently, his gaze fixed on Jennifer. Yes, she was. Is that what you wanted to hear? With this guy who found her, or with someone else? I don't know. I don't know anything about him at all. Does that make you feel better? No. I guess it just got worse. I warned you, the truth doesn't make you feel better. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to my room. Enough revelations for today. The girl left quickly. Robert locked himself in his quarters and spent the rest of the day alone. How strange, he pondered as he lay in bed. The news that Melissa wasn't faithful to me doesn't hurt so much anymore. I guess I've just gotten used to the idea. I'm much more interested in something else now. If Jennifer knew about Melissa's cheating, who else knew about it? Did it turn out like that anecdote? Everyone knew about the wife's cheating except the cheating husband. And if everyone knew, why didn't anyone open up to me about it? Jennifer knew and didn't say a word. What could I possibly have a beef with her? She and I barely knew each other at the time, and she preferred not to talk to anyone. She always kept to herself. But we had a lot of friends in common with Melissa, and no one said anything. Even my best friend, who talked to her a lot, didn't say a word. So what do I want from Jennifer? Jennifer. Robert smiled involuntarily. I've been thinking about her a lot lately. He pictured her touching smile, the sadness in her brown eyes, her fragile figure. It had been a burden to her to know that Melissa was deceiving me. How did she carry it all inside her? I wonder if Jennifer shared Melissa's secrets with anyone. No, it wasn't like her. She wasn't the chatty type. Robert closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Then he opened his eyes abruptly. No, I can't sleep. He sat up in bed. I'm going to go to Jennifer and make her finally tell me everything. What's the use of putting off an explanation? It's better to find out right away, to dot the I's and cross the T's. I can't wait till morning. So what time is it? He turned on the light and glanced at the clock. It's 2:00 in the morning. She's asleep, of course, but I can't wait till morning. I have to ask her now. She must understand me. Robert dressed hastily and tiptoed to Jennifer's cabin. He stopped in front of the door and listened. It was quiet. "Jennifer?" The young man spoke in a loud whisper and knocked gently on the cabin door. "Jennifer, please open the door. Don't be afraid, it's Robert. I need to talk to you right away." Robert listened again. The door was silent. He knocked more insistently. Suddenly, the lock clicked and the door opened. "What are you doing here?" Squinting against the bright light, the frightened girl asked, "Did you see what time it was? Why the hell are you breaking in the middle of the night? Are you awake too?" he asked, noticing her tear-stained eyes. "What business is it of yours? What do you need? Didn't your parents explain to you as a child that it's unseemly to pry into an unmarried girl's room at night? I don't want to get sentimental. We need to talk urgently," shortly answered the young man. "Let me go. I don't want to be caught at this late hour." "Come in." The girl opened the door, wrapped in a silk robe. She immediately climbed into bed and covered herself up to her chin with a blanket and pointed to a chair in the corner of the cabin, a decent distance away from her. "Is she afraid of me?" Robert wondered, noticing that Jennifer was trying to stay away from him. "So what do you want from me?" "Jennifer, I am neither a psychologist nor a physiognomist, but I immediately realized that besides cheating on Melissa, you are hiding some other secret. I want to know about it. Have you revealed it to anyone else?" Tears ran down the girl's face. "Don't cry, please." The man moved to the bed, took her hand in his. She squirmed, but didn't remove her hand. "Tell the truth. It will make you feel better. I can see something's bothering you. You and I will soon be husband and wife, and I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Don't be afraid to tell me. Believe me, nothing will change between us." "I can't," Jennifer whispered, swallowing her tears. "I just can't. You have no idea how much this will change everything. Jennifer, I promise. Everything I hear will stay forever within the walls of this cabin. No matter how much I feel hurt by your words, I swear I will not retaliate. If you fear I will retaliate for the truth about Melissa, that includes her, does it not? Am I wrong? I just want to make you feel a little better. This secret's gonna kill you. You need to tell someone. Look at me." He made her look up at him. "You can trust me, okay? Believe me, I'm not your enemy. You don't know what you're asking, so tell me. I want to know the truth, okay? I don't want to be an ostrich with my head in the sand. I've lived like that for the last year. It's time to let go of the weight of my heart. I'm tired." He was so convincing that Jennifer couldn't stand it anymore, she spoke up. "You're right in saying that Melissa and I were friends. Not just friends, classmates. Sisters, perhaps, even, because we were so close. We did homework together, often spent the night at each other's houses, like best friends should." Jennifer didn't look at Robert. She was concentrating on the blanket, which gave away her inner turmoil. "I loved her and trusted her immensely. She seemed to love me too. I admired her courage, her looseness, and I wanted to be like her. She drove the boys crazy and told me about her affairs. I envied her because I was afraid to even look in a boy's direction. Yes, we were close, though very different." The girl sobbed, and the young man took her hands in his soothingly. "Jennifer," Melissa stretched sweetly, pulling away from her textbook. It won't be long now before we finally graduate. 11 years had flown by so quickly, they haven't flown by yet. That's reasonable, Jennifer remarked. You're as stupid as your mother. Guess who my adoring wife will believe? Jennifer sat silently with her head bowed. Every word her father said hurt her. What did you think, daughter? War is war. If you keep quiet, everything will stay the same. And if you don't, but you've already realized what awaits you and your mother, you think I'm kidding? Be thankful I'm not going to divorce her, even though I'm sick to death of her. One more thing. Now that you know everything, Melissa will live with us while your mother's away on business, and God forbid you do anything to reproach her. It's my decision. If you don't like it, get out of my house. I've put up with both of you for too long already. Darling, suddenly they heard the purring voice of Melissa, and both of them shuddered. How much longer are you going to deal with your daughter? I missed you. The girl was in a pink, semi-transparent pajuara, which did not hide the appetizing forms of the seductress. On the contrary, attracted the man's gaze, igniting his desire. We're done now, aren't we, Jennifer? Without embarrassing his daughter, Jack kissed his mistress passionately. Good night, daughter. Remember my words. Jack gently placed his hand on the round buttock of the beauty, squeezed it. Melissa shrieked merrily. The man kissed her again. Finally they left. Jennifer sat still, only flinched when the bedroom door slammed shut. Robert swallowed nervously, squeezed Jennifer's hand, which he never released from his grasp. Tears fell down Robert's arm. He realized how much pain every word was causing Jennifer, gently pulled her against him. If it's hard for you to talk now, let's postpone the conversation until tomorrow. The young man suggested, I have already regretted 10 times that I woke you up. No, she recoiled from him. I've been carrying all this inside me for too long. I have to get free or my heart will be torn to shreds. She took a breath and spoke again. I was so scared. I was afraid to confess to my mom because I was afraid my dad would carry out his threats and we would be left on the streets. And then I knew that Mom really loved him very much. I did not want to interfere in their relationship, did not want to destroy my mom's illusions, happy family life. The girl was silent for a long time. Am I a coward? She quickly glanced at the young man. Are you judging me? Of course not. He stroked her hand. She withdrew into herself again for a long time. What happened then? Robert asked quietly to bring Jennifer out of her deep thoughts, and then the nightmare began. Every time Mom went away on a business trip, Melissa came to spend the night. They didn't have to hide anymore. As soon as my dad got home from work, Melissa would show up. They'd stay in the bedroom until morning. They didn't notice me, like I was nothing. I didn't talk to my father much. I didn't leave my room much at all. They enjoyed each other's company. And you, how did you put up with all this? What could I do? I went to my room and had to watch in silence as my father openly cheated on my mother with my best friend. And you never spoke to your father again. Didn't try to talk some sense into him. It was like he'd lost his mind. Jennifer said slowly, You know I feared him and hated him. With Melissa in his life, he became a total stranger to me. And now too, Melissa is gone, but the fear, it's still there. I live under a sword of Damocles, a sense of danger that won't let go. My father keeps his guard up. I try not to be alone with him. Sometimes he'll look at me like that, like an X-ray, and he'll see everything I'm thinking. How long has this been going on? Robert asked. Did they see each other for a long time? Fortunately, if I may say so, not very long. Melissa got pregnant. I don't know why, but she didn't tell her parents who the father was. They decided she was going to have the baby, and while it wasn't too noticeable yet, took her to another city. My daddy was only glad. Apparently he was fed up with her, or maybe he was afraid of the responsibility. Because if Melissa talked, he'd have to come clean. He was aware of the consequences. Jennifer was silent. What happened next? I don't know. The girl answered. The school year ended. Melissa didn't come back. I went to university, and I chose a different city to study in, so that I could live away from my father and not meet Melissa. Then I got a job there. I didn't plan on coming home at all, ever. It was hard for me to see my mom, who continued to admire my husband. I hated seeing my father. I wanted to forget everything. And yet you came back. It just happened. Jennifer furrowed her brow tensely. My job had been downsized, and I had been fired first, even though I'd had no complaints. And I've worked longer than most people. My mom says I'm shy. First we have to pass our exams. Then we can say goodbye to school. Hey friend, can I sleep over tonight? What's wrong? This is the third night in a row you've stayed over. I'm not sorry, of course, especially since Mom's away on business again, but it's still weird. Why don't we sleep at your place? I'm sick of my dad's remarks about what I didn't do. He'll always find something to pick on. Our parents are in trouble again. Melissa wrinkled her nose. I don't want to stay at home and listen to their quarrels. They always share something, and I get hit, as if it's my fault that they got married and gave birth to me. Okay, stay. Jennifer agreed. You'll help at home. We'll manage everything together, and it's more fun together. In the evening, the friends talked for a long time and fell asleep late. Jennifer was awakened in the middle of the night by a vague feeling of unease. Melissa? She whispered into the darkness. She reached out her hand and realized that the girl was not beside her. Melissa, where are you? Jennifer sat up in bed, listening. A minute passed, another. Her friend did not appear. Where had she gone? Getting up, Jennifer muttered. Did she get lost? Is she stuck in the toilet? Yawning, she walked to the kitchen, slapping the floor with her bare feet. Strange, it's dark everywhere. There's definitely no one in the bathroom and no one in the kitchen. Pushed by a vague premonition, she cautiously opened the door to her parents' bedroom. Melissa. Involuntarily shrieked Jennifer, caught with horror. On the bed in an embrace lay naked Melissa and her father. Dad, how could you? The father, as if stung, jumped up in bed, quickly threw a blanket over the girl lying next to him, with the same speed put on his underpants and rushed to his daughter. What the hell are you doing in the bedroom? How many times have I told you not to come in without permission? He hissed angrily, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her into the kitchen. He pushed the confused Jennifer into a chair, turned on the light, and fixed his eyes on her face. Remember, you saw nothing. The girl listened to her father, and it seemed to her that in front of her was not her favorite father, but some furious monster with rabid eyes. Try to tell your mother what you saw. I'll destroy you both. Dad, how could you? She's my classmate. Jennifer's lips trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks, covering her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away, afraid to move, lest she anger her angry father even more. The skin on her head burned, but the girl endured. Resentment rising in her heart, Jennifer didn't know how to behave after everything that had happened. What about Mom? Mom? Dad laughed. Your mom doesn't get out on business trips, and I'm a man. I need a woman every day, not once in a while. And the fact that Melissa is young? He hesitated, trying to find the right words. That's the good thing about her. She gives me something I've never gotten from your mother in my life. You have to tell your mother everything yourself, or I will. I'm not gonna let you cheat on her. You can't do something so mean to her. Don't you dare." The father advanced threateningly toward his daughter. "And I won't let you hurt her. Mom will kick you out of the house. I'm the one who will kick you out because the apartment is mine. So think before you open your mouth, and your mother won't believe you. She loves me too much, that silly goose, but I'll do everything I can to turn her against you. Believe me, I'll convince her you're lying about me. Mommy won't believe you." Jennifer sobbed, not very confidently. "To the bosses need toothy, self-aware workers, and I could not defend myself." "So what? You couldn't find a new job?" "I couldn't get a job quickly. I needed something to live on and something to pay the rent. And then my mom started calling me every day and urging me to come back because she missed me so much." "So you came back?" "Yeah, I was weak again. I let my emotions get in the way." "You don't regret coming back?" "Of course I do. I felt like a sheep to the slaughter, and I couldn't change anything." "You're like a snail, always in a shell." "That's true. I wasn't very good at showing my feelings before, and I'm not so good at it now. When I'm with my father, I get lost. I can't say a word. It's like I'm paralyzed. At such moments, I see myself again as a 17-year-old girl, intimidated by my father in the kitchen. I can even still physically feel the pain I felt when he dragged me out of the bedroom. Also, it took me a long time to get rid of the mocking look Melissa always gave me as she walked out of my parents' bedroom in the mornings. If someone else had told me that story, I never would have believed it. Robert spoke thoughtfully. "I've been watching your family. Your father is very good to you, and I never thought he could be cruel." "Oh, yes," said the girl, grinning. "Sometimes I think I'm crazy, that all my fears are a figment of my imagination. Father acts as if nothing had ever happened. He's back to the kind and caring father I knew him to be before I met Melissa, and his love affairs are just something I made up. I almost believed I was imagining it myself, until one day Melissa came home. So she was out of town the whole time. Yeah, I didn't know anything about her all those years. I cut all ties with her after high school. I didn't realize I'd have to see her again. She came back a couple of years after I did. I was sure my father wouldn't see her again. And for a while Melissa had fun with other men, changing them like gloves, easily breaking hearts, manipulating the feelings of fans in love. I watched her from afar, hoping that she would leave my family alone forever, waiting for her to finally marry and settle down. Only I was wrong, naively believing that Melissa was thus seeking her feminine happiness. She wanted to make my father jealous. And did he succumb to her charms again? Not at first. I was glad she no longer had power over him. I believed that my father was cured of his morbid attachment to her. And then Melissa met you." Jennifer glanced quickly at Robert and hid her eyes again. "You were such a beautiful couple, and I had a hope in my heart that Melissa had finally found her womanhood. She looked truly in love. I had already decided she was settling down. All that was before you met her was meaningless youthful fun. Family life must be a lot to live up to. I thought she loved me too. I never doubted my feeling for her. I'd tear anyone's throat out for her. And like all lovers," Jennifer smiled sympathetically, "hadn't you noticed that Melissa is not what you thought she was, enchanted by her beauty and intelligence? You can't take that away from her. My father didn't mind Melissa's slight infatuations. He realized that she was deliberately trying to hurt his feelings and make him jealous. Both she and he knew what was going on. The rest of us were completely unaware that a love affair was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. But with you, Melissa was about to get married. He realized that Melissa would soon be out of his reach, and forbidden fruit is always sweet. So Dad had another affair with her, which is exactly what your fiancé was counting on. How hard it must have been for you to see all that and not be able to stop. You're right. I couldn't bear to see my father and my girlfriend, and I felt sorry for my mother. She had no idea what was going on behind her back. They both stopped talking. Did you know Melissa was pregnant? Robert asked suddenly. Unfortunately, yes. She sat with her head down again, her voice low and sympathetic. I only found out by accident, and after Melissa was dead. The girl fell silent. It was hard for her to speak. Jennifer woke up early, habitually shaved her way to the kitchen to make her parents' breakfast. She was stopped by her father's muffled voice coming from the kitchen. "What are you going to do? Raise me?" Jack said irritably into the phone. "It's too late. I'm a big boy, but don't tell me that you've never had a mistress." The girl froze, realizing that it was Melissa, although her father had not mentioned any names. "There, you don't need to conscience me at all. I understand perfectly well. There's nothing to worry about. I assure you, I'm not going to marry her." "Yeah, well, that's just the way it is. Could you have held out?" "Neither could I. Don't you know how these things are done? For money, any midwife will do the best." Jennifer went cold. Melissa is pregnant? The father wants to send her for an abortion? What a rascal! The girl shook with fear of being seen, but she forced herself to listen to the conversation to the end. There's no problem anymore. Jennifer heard that the father was beginning to lose patience. The problem solved itself. I didn't understand what Dad meant at the time, and later I learned that Melissa had died. I'm so sorry you had to find out all that. You know, Robert spoke slowly. I refused to believe that Melissa had betrayed me. I loved her so much. Didn't you? I literally idolized her, didn't want to see the obvious. I broke up with my friends who tried to open up to me about my fiancé. Now I know for a fact that there was no kind, sweet, open Melissa. You're right, I made her up. I'm sorry. Jennifer looked at Robert, not daring to look at him, and he was struck by her eyes. There was so much pain and compassion in them that the young man's heart suddenly ached. My family brought you pain. I have always felt a terrible sense of guilt toward you. I didn't know how to open your eyes. It's not your fault. Robert tried to calm her down. Yes, it is, she said stubbornly. I should have told you a long time ago. You probably wouldn't have believed me then, though. She smiled sadly. Melissa was misleading everyone with her charm, and I couldn't help it. Imagine if I came to you and told you that your fiancé was cheating on you. I wouldn't have believed it. That's why I didn't tell you before, but I don't want to keep quiet anymore. It's time to open that boil. She had no right to use you. You don't deserve to be treated like this. Jennifer. Robert looked at her thoughtfully. Explain to me why you decided to marry me. I'm filled with guilt. She confessed. I want to help heal your wounds. I know I can do it. I will be by your side until you finally come to your senses and learn to trust your feelings again. Then you'll meet a woman and you'll love her. And I'll be out of your life because you won't need me. Jennifer. The man squeezed the girl's hands and looked fondly into her eyes full of inexpressible sadness. I don't want you to go. You know, I suddenly realized that I don't need anyone but you. You're extraordinary, amazing. No, she objected. You're feeling grateful right now, but I don't want your gratitude. What do you need me for? I'm withdrawn. I like to be alone. I don't know how to get along with people. You need another wife. You don't know yourself. Robert said affectionately, I see a brave, caring, and defenseless girl in front of me. I want to embrace you, to be your protector, to guard your peace, so that no one would ever dare to hurt you even with a glance. But I can't give you anything. Jennifer answered confused, "You are here beside me. I believe that in time, when we know each other better, we can truly love each other. It's the pity in you that speaks for a girl hurt by fate." Jennifer shook her head sadly. "I don't believe in love, and I don't know how to love. My father killed that feeling in me, destroyed my faith. I'm just a shadow of a real person, and I'm burned out inside. You won't find happiness with me." Me. Robert took her face in his palms and looked directly into her eyes. "Do you believe me?" He saw how the expression of her eyes gradually changed. Among distrust, fear, confusion, suddenly flashed a ray of hope. The young man smiled broadly at the girl. "I believe." Finally, hesitantly, she whispered, "Then we'll definitely succeed." They stepped out onto the deck, breathing in the cool sea air. They stood in each other's arms, looking up into the endless starry sky. They had found peace and freedom by finding each other through fate. The unwanted wedding was the beginning of a bright new life for both of them.
New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
A hospital corridor. A greenish-tiled old man peered into my eyes. From the daylight lamp, long children's thoughts stretched out. The ceiling echoed in his temples. Jenna nervously fingered the bracelet on her arm, walked back and forth along the corridor, adding the clatter of heels to the sunset of the lamps. She sat down, trying to calm down, then jumped up again. The doors of the operating room echoed with a rustle and a slight creak. A doctor stepped out of them. Jenna jumped up again, looking hopefully at the medic. "Doctor, please don't be silent." She folded her arms across her chest in a pleading gesture. "The odds are 50-50. What will get up from the wheelchair?" The doctor finally said, tightening the mask around her chin. Jenna sorrowfully sobs again. "You have to believe in the best. He is still young. He will recover," cheered the girl medic. And I wanted to believe in the best. Of course, Jenna was worried about her husband's health. But she was more concerned about the loss of the family's main income and the question of who would now provide for them. Jacob drove out of the hallway to meet his wife returning from work. Jenna was not in a good mood. Lately, this state had become a constant for her. She had to get up early, work, do household chores, and still take care of her invalid husband. "How was your day?" Jacob asked, taking the girl's bag and bag from her. "Disgusting," abruptly threw Jenna, taking off her coat. Jacob left for the kitchen. He was quite briskly handling the stroller and could even boast some mobility, if it could be called that. The man moved the bag of groceries to the floor near the refrigerator and began to open the door. He could only put the groceries on the first shelf or the bottom of the door. Oh, and it would spill over here now. Jenna snatched the bottle of milk from him, which she had opened on the way out, slammed it down and closed it loosely. It wouldn't leak to the neighbors. "Why are you yelling?" Jacob looked at her. "Would someone wipe it up? Are you talking, Jenna?" She felt developed and irritated by her husband's helpfulness. He realized his limited functionality, so he tried not to inconvenience his wife. At first, Jacob was even ashamed, but later he accepted his condition and stopped suffering from remorse. "In a bag of ready-made cutlets from the cookhouse. Heat them up for yourself. Can you manage?" "I'm tired." Jenna pulled down her temples with her hands and went into the room. The couch echoed with a faint creak. The cat was rubbing his leg, begging for a tasty treat. Jenna sat like a sorpus, fictional, lethargic, and universal. This wasn't the life she'd envisioned when she married the handsome athlete Extreme Lego. And now he's deprived of his outlet and his livelihood. And she has to work for two, running all over town, showing beggars. The family's cheap apartments. Not so. Jenna planned to spend her youth. She didn't. The husband had been in the chair for 6 months. At first, they had lived on old savings, but those soon ran out. Jenna had delayed until the last moment to look for a job. She was scared, and her inner ego was against it. By the age of 25, the girl had no sensible experience. She worked part-time doing shoots for online clothing stores, ran a blog of a young stylist, although she had a good education in the hospitality business. Realtor. No longer had it passed her by since the early days. So, all useless people, incomprehensible payment, running around, a lot of calls, the need to persuade someone, ride on the ears. What was it that kept the girl in such a flying place? The charming director and owner of the agency. He appeared there rarely, but every time it was in the office, the morning began. The entire small number of female staff began to intensively tidy up, correct makeup, check the manicure. And this was done, as well as very young female students moonlighting in their spare time, and an elderly accountant. Jenna also fell under the influence of Michael's charms. And the more time passed, the wider the gap between her and Jacob became. Jenna stopped believing in the mythical prognosis of doctors, and counting on chance is a thankless business. But here he was, a living, handsome man. Even if it is not hers yet, but it is only a matter of time. Such thoughts swarmed daily in the girl's head. There was a constant struggle between duty, feelings, selfishness, and conscience, and that evening's selfishness and inner whims won out. Jenna at some point realized that she did not care at all about the opinion of others, that she did not want to support an invalid husband until retirement and to cross out her whole life with it. She too deserves happiness, deserves the joy of being a girl, not a frontal horse on her neck cart. The decision came in a moment. Strangely, such a momentous turn was made on an ordinary couch in an ordinary city apartment on an ordinary March cerebral evening. "Are you going somewhere?" asked Jacob, watching his wife pack a pile of things into a bag. "Yes," Jenna nodded briefly. "We're going to your mom's." The dwarf even raised an eyebrow in surprise and smiled with the corner of his mouth. "What kind of nonsense is this? The daughter-in-law herself wants to go to her mother-in-law's house." The daughter-in-law was giving up to work for two. Jenna tossed Jacob's sneakers into the bag with an apt throw. The man fell silent, and Jenna just burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore, okay? I can't. I'm beautiful, I'm young, I want romance. I want a decent man by my side. I want care and affection, not to look after an invalid." "Jean, I'll get out of the wheelchair," Jacob interrupted her. "The doctors said there's a chance. Or maybe you won't. I'm sick of this." Jenna threw in her bag another couple of t-shirts and with a precise movement zipped up the zipper. "Are you staying at your mother's? We need to live apart for at least a few months. 6 months. I don't know." They were both silent. Jenna was getting behind the point being made. Jacob realized that he was being discarded as an unnecessary thing. Indeed, what good is such a helpless and useless husband? And aren't you afraid of hanging off the ground on that inflatable mattress? Fellow Kevin pushed, barely landing, Jacob in the shoulder. "Don't go into the forest to fear the wolves," the man grinned, laying the foam on the grass so that he could collect it without getting tangled in the slings. Jacob and Kevin have been taking tourists on extreme mountain tours to the Caucasus for 5 years. The guys had tried everything that could tickle nerves and make your body shake. Rafting, jump rope, quad biking, long-distance hiking, mountaineering. But most of all, Jacob was interested in paragliding. He spent almost the whole summer in the mountains. He flew, tried, learned, took bumps. He whacked his knees on landing. Once he dislocated his elbow, caught on a tree paraglider, and fell from a height of a couple of meters to the ground. The air of freedom and the charm of the mountains beckoned the stubborn guy, who flew where others were afraid, and stayed under the clouds for so long that his fingers began not to have from the cold. Jacob began to ride tourists when he himself was already convinced of his own skill. So the guys worked Kevin for the driver and organizer, Jacob for the coordinator and implementers of extreme entertainment. In 6 months, the guys earned so much that the other 6 months could not work at all. But they didn't. They simply changed the style of travel, and instead of a couple of plans, they went snowboarding and skiing with tourists. "Oh, Jacob, you are finishing your stuff. If you fall off that high, you're still picking bones." His mother, Adriana, nodded a couple of times. But the guy liked living like this. It's 100 times better than sitting in a stuffy office poking at buttons. Dangerous. So what? It's dangerous to sneeze in public these days. So what? Now I'm not going out. Of course not. You have a great education. Go to the bank, make a career. My mother wouldn't stop, and the children will go too. Will you go to the mountains? No wife, no kids either. Mom, why are you bothering again? Jacob sighed tiredly. Parent was in her repertoire. Talks about the dangers of paragliding and frivolous with the tourist business were repeated regularly, even if it brought decent money. With Jen and Jacob met in a social network. He was bored on a winter evening. Guy scrolled through the newsfeed and came across the page Pretty Girls. Something about this brunette rather caught the young man's eye. Word of mouth. They went on a couple dates. The girl was impressed by Jacob's boldness and passion. He took her on several trips, even offered to take her paragliding, and that evening selfishness and inner whims won out. Jenna at some point realized that she did not care at all about the opinion of others, that she did not want to support an invalid husband until retirement and to cross out her whole life with it. She too deserves happiness, deserves the joy of being a girl, not a frontal horse on her neck cart. The decision came in a moment. Strangely, such a momentous turn was made on an ordinary couch in an ordinary city apartment on an ordinary March cerebral evening. Are you going somewhere? Asked Jacob, watching his wife pack a pile of things into a bag. Yes, Jenna nodded briefly. We're going to your mom's. The dwarf even raised an eyebrow in surprise and smiled with the corner of his mouth. What kind of nonsense is this? The daughter-in-law herself wants to go to her mother-in-law's house. The daughter-in-law was giving up to work for two. Jenna tossed Jacob's sneakers into the bag with an apt throw. The man fell silent, and Jenna just burst into tears. I can't do this anymore, okay? I can't. I'm beautiful, I'm young. I want romance. I want a decent man by my side. I want care and affection, not to look after an invalid. Jean, I'll get out of the wheelchair. Jacob interrupted her. The doctors said there's a chance. Or maybe you won't. I'm sick of this. Jenna threw in her bag another couple of t-shirts and with a precise movement zipped up the zipper. Are you staying at your mother's? We need to live apart for at least a few months. 6 months. I don't know. They were both silent. Jenna was getting behind the point being made. Jacob realized that he was being discarded as an unnecessary thing. Indeed, what good is such a helpless and useless husband? And aren't you afraid of hanging off the ground on that inflatable mattress? Fellow Kevin pushed, barely landing, Jacob in the shoulder. Don't go into the forest to fear the wolves, the man grinned, laying the foam on the grass so that he could collect it without getting tangled in the slings. Jacob and Kevin have been taking tourists on extreme mountain tours to the Caucasus for 5 years. The guys had tried everything that could tickle nerves and make your body shake. Rafting, jump rope, quad biking, long-distance hiking, mountaineering. But most of all, Jacob was interested in paragliding. He spent almost the whole summer in the mountains. He flew, tried, learned, took bumps. He wiped his knees on landing. Once he dislocated his elbow, caught on a tree paraglider, and fell from a height of a couple of meters to the ground. The air of freedom and the charm of the mountains beckoned the stubborn guy who flew where others were afraid, and stayed under the clouds for so long that his fingers began not to have from the cold. Jacob began to ride tourists when he himself was already convinced of his own skill. So the guys worked Kevin for the driver and organizer, Jacob for the coordinator and implementers of extreme entertainment. In 6 months, the guys earned so much that the other 6 months could not work at all. But they didn't. They simply changed the style of travel, and instead of a couple of plans, they went snowboarding and skiing with tourists. Oh, Jacob, you are finishing your stuff. If you fall off that high, you're still picking bones. His mother, Adriana, nodded a couple of times. But the guy liked living like this. It's 100 times better than sitting in a stuffy office poking at buttons. Dangerous. So what? It's dangerous to sneeze in public these days. So what? Now I'm not going out. Of course not. You have a great education. Go to the bank, make a career. My mother wouldn't stop, and the children will go too. Will you go to the mountains? No wife, no kids either. "Mom, why are you bothering again?" Jacob sighed tiredly. Parent was in her repertoire. Talks about the dangers of paragliding and frivolous with the tourist business were repeated regularly, even if it brought decent money. With Jenna, Jacob met in a social network. He was bored on a winter evening. I scrolled through the newsfeed and came across the page Pretty Girls. Something about this brunette rather caught the young man's eye. Word of mouth. They went on a couple dates. The girl was impressed by Jacob's boldness and passion. He took her on several trips, even offered to take her paragliding, but she said no. Everything spun quickly, and in less than 6 months he proposed to her. Jacob was not embarrassed that the chosen one is spoiled, somewhat capricious, ambitious. But she always waited at home, cooked delicious salads and breast, did not criticize his hobbies. At work, Jacob's spouse did not kick out. Let her do what she likes, he told his mother. I earn enough for two, but always beautiful and fresh. Jenna was more than happy with this arrangement. She was already dreaming of a full-service travel agency, a house somewhere by the sea, a column in some fashion magazine. Life went on at its own pace. Jacob and his wife lived together for a year and a half. His mother gave them her 2-room apartment, and she bought a small house in a village outside the city, with her savings, and moved in. But on the condition that soon there would be grandchildren. Jacob joked. Jenna rolled her eyes. Children were not in her plans for the next 100 years. But Adriana didn't need to know that. Instead of children, Jenna suggested her husband get a Spitz. Jacob was not against it and promised that after the next tour they would go together, breed her and choose a puppy. A happy Jenna stayed home in anticipation, and Jacob and Kevin took the hikers to the mountains. Jacob was warned by everyone that the good his passion for flying would not end. But fate had other plans. The return trip in the mountains came in rainy weather. In late August, Kevin drove a minibus with a group, extremely careful to slow down on the serpentine corners. Jacob dozed in the passenger seat in the front, tired from the busy program and the early rise. It all happened in a split second when a dashing local in his car spun out of the turn and into the oncoming traffic. Kevin, you steered sideways to avoid hitting him. The car rolled over on its side and hit the passenger side of a pole and a concrete barrier. Jacob squeezed barely in half between the roof and the dashboard. The other passengers sprinkled like peas in the cabin, but thankfully no one else was so seriously hurt. They suffered abrasions, bruises, bumps, and a couple of broken fingers. Kevin dislocated his arm and suffered a concussion. Substantial Jacob was pulled out by emergency workers only 40 minutes later. Even rescuers don't travel fast in the rain in the mountains. He was taken to the nearest hospital, but there was no one there to take on the complicated operation. The man was urgently sent home to the capital of the region. There he could be given at least a chance to get back on his feet. The operation was successful. Jacob recovered quickly, but below the waist he was paralyzed. Without words, it was clear that extreme sports were over for life. Extreme and the job he loved. The minivan was beyond recovery. The firm was wiped out, with no transportation and no chief instructor. Jenna howled when she realized her beautiful, comfortable doll life was over. Her attitude toward her husband changed almost immediately. Whereas before she had seen him as a heroic pillar of leadership, a lover of danger, now only a source of trouble. Jacob experienced the crisis of mobility deprivation for a long time. He became depressed. 10 times a day he reviewed photos from trips, pulled the edge of the paraglider out of his backpack. The one in his hands sighed as he stared at one point. The atmosphere in the apartment was dragging. The doctor prescribed Jacob a set of exercises that were supposed to have an effect in time. But the man, disgusted by his helplessness, could not start doing them for a long time. Jenna avoided talking about the accident and the cow. You do him with your nose to his flaw at first. But as the irritation and exertion grew, she sometimes snapped. Jacob's fighting spirit only his mother tried to raise. She urged to believe in the best and not to give up therapeutic gymnastics. Once in a while, Kevin came to visit, but it was still difficult for the boy to talk about what he himself had lost. Time passed gradually. The former paraglider finally heeded the doctor's insistence and began to do exercises sometimes. Just in time, Jenna was baking at work and had a breakdown. It was a frosty morning in the village. A bunch of rowan trees were covered with frost. As if earrings decorated the bulb bush, a flock of sparrows hopped about in it with a cheerful beat. Frost covered the ground. Jenna opened the gate and wheeled the stroller onto the narrow path to the porch. Adriana sprinted out the door in downy shawls. Together, the two women pulled the stroller into the hay. "Will you be visiting long, Jenna?" asked the mother-in-law, touching invisibly and the dregs of her son's jacket. "Jacob, for a long time. And I will go back to the city. I have to work," answered Jenna briefly. Adriana had no sooner opened her mouth than her daughter-in-law said a crumpled goodbye, slammed the door, and sped back to the cab to catch the train. The women stared at their son in confusion. Jacob was blacker than a cloud. He'd lost his favorite job, his ability to walk, and now his personal life hung in the balance. A couple days later, Jenna arrived again. The man was hopeful when he heard the gate bang outside his window. But Jacob was not happy yet. "I've always wanted a dog." Jenna, without even saying hello, put a carrier on the floor with Macton's cat. The frightened cat collapsed, shrunk against the back wall, and scowled hoarsely. Jenna walked away, not even bothering to say goodbye to Mactopus. Jacob began to feel a little better. The intelligent animal quickly became accustomed to the new conditions. The cat often slept on the lap of the owner, when Jacob sat by the window in a stroller or on the street, breathing fresh air. Sometimes Martin would get out of his seat and jump up and down to catch sparrows in the snow or hunt for an unknown speck in the dry grass. Jacob liked to watch the pet. It calmed him and drove away both boredom and longing for adventure. 2 months passed. It was the end of March. During that time, Jenna never came back for him. At first, the man called and wrote to her himself, but as time went on, his wife stopped picking up the phone and responded to social media with one-word answers. Jacob realized that he had been disposed of cynically and completely nonchalantly. His mother shook her head and often scolded Jenna. Especially, she was concerned about the suspended state left by the son of the apartment. "Good girl," Adriana lamented. "Mushenko fixed on my neck. She's living in the city in someone else's palace. Jacob, filing for divorce, I'm telling you. And everything will get better. Stop it." The man waved away our tribute to his mother, but he himself believed in his own words less and less. Apathy and longing ate Jacob. He was tormented by his own idleness because he could not do most of the housework. Walks were rare. Pulling the stroller down a couple porched steps to the ground was difficult. Once again, as Adriana settled in to do this, an elderly neighbor, Frank, peered over the fence at her. "And Adriana, what are you going to say that you have him on your hands?" In righteous indignation shouted the old man simply. "Hello, Frank," replied the woman. "So how else would you help them to scratch your tongue?" The gate is open. The neighbor deftly, not at all senile, ran to the wheelchair and helped down the steps to the path to the gate. At the same time, he asked both Jacob and his mother about what had happened. The man scratched the back of his head, shifting his knitted cap to the side. "And it is not clear whether he will stand up or not," complained Adriana. "I'll get up," Jacob muttered, feeling terribly embarrassed that 2 elderly people have to deal with him. "I got it." Frank threw up a finger. "Tomorrow I'll come and adapt it for your wheelchair. Then you're a grandson." He turned to Jacob. "Can you drive up and down? You better get back on your feet, though." "Okay." Jacob smiled a little and sighed. "Frank is not like my grandfather. God rest his soul, lazy." Adriana exclaimed. He only knew how to make holes in his socks. The company laughed involuntarily. The neighbor soon left, having previously inspected the porch, and Adriana rolled the stroller along the sidewalk to the store. Jenna opened her laptop, taking a seat on the soft couch after work. Without looking, she waved at a text message from her husband with another question. The woman was interested in something else. Today, Michael, the director of the agency, finally paid attention to her and invited her to have coffee together at lunch. It was not for nothing that Jenna wore short skirts and spent several hours every day in the morning at the mirror. The purposefulness with which Jenna moved towards the goal, in the director's opinion, was worthy of applause. The girl went with the chief to a coffee shop, and in every possible way made it clear that she did not mind to continue communication in a more informal setting. Michael caught the hint, and at the end of lunch invited the pretty employee to dinner at the restaurant at the end of the week. Jenna cheered. "His suit is clearly not from a local seamstress," Jenna muttered under her breath as she looked at pictures of her boss on social media. "And a decent watch and cufflinks." Her eyes burned with admiration, but more with herself. From the moment Jenna had put her husband in the care of her mother-in-law. A month had passed, and in that time she realized that she was not living so badly. Work was suddenly no longer stressful. Cooking and cleaning became a rare worry. There was enough money for herself and still had time to shoot for clothing catalogs. Sometimes on the mental horizon slipped thoughts of divorce, but so far Jenna them from the metal. It was necessary to prepare the ground for a run-up, so as not to sit soft place in a puddle. How calculating. Cunning woman Jenna understood this and therefore did not rush, although Jacob could have been served at any moment. But she'd think of something, and not much believed Jenna that kind, attached to her Jacob first will go to such a step. The pictures of the boss told Jenna what she wanted to know. Michael, in his 35 years, was the owner of a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and clearly had a passion for business things, foreign tailoring. The girl leaned back contentedly on the back of the sofa, scrolling through in her head options for outfits for a future date. A sick husband and the overall fact of a legal marriage did not slow Jenna down one bit. She didn't, as they call it, give a damn. X day came. Michael came to pick her up in his automobile. Jenna, from the moment of her work in the agency, tried not to spread much about her personal life. She took off the ring right after she sent Jacob to the country. And so in the car she was already flirting with her boss, who was 10 years older than her. The girl got what she wanted. In the morning, she woke up in the house of her lover. Michael brought her coffee and asked if the young lady wants to go to the skating rink. A couple days later, Jenna coquettishly agreed. Everything went according to plan. She told Mike what he wanted to hear, and he was slipping into an affair with his coworker. At work, they decided not to publicize the relationship, although it was difficult to hide something in the female staff. Soon the whole office was judging that the head had a young mistress. Jenna quietly laughed at the chicken's colleagues, but to reveal the secret was in no hurry. Michael was her target. The first day of April was too warm. It was as if the sun had reached the clear sky, and now it could make all the plants bloom in one day. There were even some sleepy flies in the air, stupefied by the sudden joy of plus 19 degrees. Fyodor Frank scratched his stubbled chin and took his visor, looking at the sun. "Look how it's resolved." He nodded to Jacob. The man sat in his baby carriage on the path by the porch and kept route company with this neighbor while he remodeled the Bukovina into a sturdy, smooth slope. On Jacob's lap stomped Martin the cat. He Charlie had paws Olympic at the owner. "Now we'll put something here than there, and you'll ride like a racer," shouted an elderly neighbor, wielding a hammer. "Yes, at least we do not violate traffic rules," smiled Jacob. He'd been a little more spirited lately. Maybe it was the weather, or maybe it was the fact that Jenna had practically abandoned him. Either way, clarity had come. Besides, Jacob had figured out a way to brighten up his hated idleness. He decided to write a book about his journey to the paragliding regimen. He found a blank notebook in his desk and began to jot down ideas. Jacob had never written any texts before, unless you counted the essays at school. However, his work went quite briskly. It was the abundant reading in the winter evenings. His mother had always favored books and had plenty of them at home. In the same winter evenings, he and his parents. Sometimes the two neighbors were in the kitchen, reading opposite each other, drinking herbal tea. At such moments, Jacob forgot that he was deprived of the ability to walk and became a little happier. Martin stretched his striped back, jumped to the ground, and hid behind the fence on some feline business. Done. Frank looked at the completed work and then turned to Jacob. Only son, try to drive in by yourself." Jacob, helping himself with his hands, began to carefully roll the stroller up the man-made at the ramp. A few minutes, and he with his vehicle without any help was already at the door to the house. "Well, that's good," praised his neighbor. "Grandpa came from the fence. Are you here? Let's go to lunch. I'm a schismatic boiled." Jacob turned his head at that ringing, like a crunch of thin ice on puddles. A voice from outside the wicket was waving its arms, a girl in a striped sweater. Her blonde curls were poking out from under her beret, and her bright blue eyes were visible even at a distance of a few meters. "My granddaughter Lisa." Frank nodded imperceptibly. "Jacob is in town for the weekend to study." "At whom?" The old one still didn't understand. "Grandpa, come on, let's go. It's getting cold." All demanding, "Fuel foot." Guests behind the wicket. "I'm coming, and why are you shouting?" Good-naturedly waved her neighbor. "I'll go." "Adriana, say hello. See you again." The bolt under the roof is bad. It could do with a new one. Frank gathered the tools in a bag, waved to Jacob, and went out the gate to his granddaughter. The man thanked his neighbor for his hard work, and suddenly realized that he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa, even though he hadn't even met her. April continued to bring warmth and wind. Rare gray-white piles of snow remained on the flower beds, and among them sprouts of the first spring flowers were sticking out of the ground. Jacob had not written Jenna for a long time, but was actively working on the book. The second notebook was already written. "Carts, can you get to the store yourself? Have you run out of salt? My mother yelled from the kitchen, and I can't move. The pies will burn and the soup will run away." The way to the grocery store was simple, a straight asphalt path of 250 meters long, the entrance to the premises without steps and a path without potholes. "I can do it," Jacob said. He hastily put on his jacket, checked the change in his pocket, and rolled towards the wicket. Happy that he could help at last. "It's time to go for a walk," his mother looked out of the window. The tires of the stroller rustled quietly on the already dry asphalt. Jacob moved slowly, looking at the village. In the gray and dull winter, it was depressing. But when the sun came out, the carved old skates played at once. Benches lived on the roofs. In front of the yards looked colored tires in the future flower beds. Nimble sparrows dragged grain from the chickens' feeders with ringing cuttings. Somewhere sheep were sick. The noise gladdened the heart, heralding the coming warmth of people and animals. Jacob got to the store without problems, bought salt, and rolled back. Almost back to the house, he heard the pitiful familiar meows from the roof of the neighbors. The man looked up. There was Martin sitting on the roof. Jacob had seen from the window that the cat used to climb up there on scaffolding. The neighbors were repairing something in the attic, where consisted almost all winter. But the repair was over, the scaffolding was removed, so as not to wait for the flower in front of the windows. And poor Kodov was trapped. There was no tree nearby, no roof lower than a suitable fence to climb down. The unfortunate Martin climbed into the attic to the neighbors. The day before, fell asleep there, and in the morning they removed the scaffolding. And now frightened animals, seeing the owner, howled at the top of his voice. "You're stuck, poor guy. How are we going to get you off? Here is a problem." Jacob looked questioningly at the pet. He tried knocking and calling the neighbors, but they weren't home. Apparently, his conscience did not allow him to call Jacob's mother. The feeling of helplessness and inferiority came again. The man looked hatefully at the stroller. If it weren't for her, he would have swung over the fence, climbed onto the roof by improvised means, and lowered the striped one to the ground. Poor thing. A familiar ringing voice snapped Jacob out of his musings. Frank's granddaughter was standing nearby, and once again she took to the roof. "Yes, I wonder how to get it," cautiously nodded Jacob. "Well, you don't have much to think about," remarked Lisa. "Well, we can't leave the mustache in the lurch." She put the bag with some food on her colleague's lap, rolled up the sleeves of her sweater, and without shyness, climbed right over the fence to the neighbors. The man only clapped his eyes in amazement. The vivacious girl aroused in him a feeling of real admiration. Lisa went around the house and found an old 3-step skirt by the barn. She shook the find happily, showing Jacob that the idea was there with 3. It turned out to be low enough to climb on the roof, but high enough to reach her hands to its edge and grab the cat's paw. The frightened Martin clutched at the girl's arm exhaustively and looked around with bulging eyes. When the animal was on the ground, Lisa put it directly into the hands of its owner through the hole between the fence bars, and then carefully carried it with the 3 coups to the spot and swung the fence just as deftly in the opposite direction. There was no trace of the sudden intrusion. You had us worried. She knelt down in front of Jacob and affectionately patted the cat's fur. Thank you. I don't know how I would have gotten it myself. Jacob handed the girl a bag of groceries. My name is Lisa, by the way, introduced herself. Obviously you wouldn't, or he would have waited for someone else. The hearty passerby exchanged. The man smiled slightly. It's a good thing you were the passerby. Lisa wrinkled his nose. Let's get on a first-name basis. Why are we like old people? I'm just uncomfortable. I'm probably 10 years older than you. Jacob was embarrassed. We look the same age, Lisa remarked. What's the point then? To be polite. That's right, Jacob agreed. He rolled forward a little and stopped at his gate. Let me give you a hand. Lisa reached for the handle to open the door so Jacob could drive through freely. She stepped carelessly and tripped over the curved ledge. The man's reaction was lightning fast. He lunged forward and picked Lisa up with his arms. Well, I'm clumsy. She cleverly hid her embarrassment behind a laugh. It happens to everyone. It's okay. Jacob played along. Lisa, come to our house with Frank. We'll have tea. Of course we will. Grandpa was just saying something about the roof. Lisa remembered and nodded in agreement. She waved goodbye and went on her way. Jacob was happy as a child for some reason. He rolled the stroller onto the porch, opened the door to the house, where a hungry Martin stepped in. It was only then that he realized what had happened a moment ago. For the first time since the accident, the man felt his legs weakly as he pitched forward. They recoiled with a slight tingling in his knees. Jenna stretched out in bed, rays of sunlight falling through the window. The hands on the clock showed around 10 o'clock. Michael wasn't around. He always left early. Apart from weekends, work was the most important lady in the life of the director of a real estate agency. Jenna was in no hurry to get to work. She was already thinking of quitting. She was annoyed that Mike didn't suggest it. After all, they were already in a relationship, and he could also allocate some money for her. When coworkers called with questions about being ready to show apartments to buyers, Jenna always found waving goodbye. Sick with fatigue, business, an urgent trip. If he didn't offer, she had to quit, Jenna decided, waiting for the machine to make coffee. She liked it much better at Mike's house than at her husband's apartment. Quiet, spacious, and every little thing is taken care of by a robot vacuum cleaner. Dishes are washed by a machine, and everything else is automated to the max. It's also perfectly clean. Once a week, Michael ordered a total house cleaning from a cleaning company. He couldn't stand dirt and piles of junk, and he also preferred dry cleaning, where all the things were given to the hanger. They're already perfectly laid out. Unlike Jacob, he was always on parade, not lugging around all sorts of places with tourists, looking after himself. All of which Jenna clung to. That's how she'd always wanted to live. That was the level she aspired to. She had already realized the first part of the plan by becoming the boss's mistress. The next part was to gradually accustom him to herself, in his personal space. Jenna was already looking predatorily at Michael's second car, figuring out whether she needed a fur coat for the next season and when it was better to take a vacation. And there, when everything will be already grabbed, she will quietly divorce Jacob. The girl's plans were Napoleonic. At work, began to suspect a connection with the boss. When Michael gave her a ride a couple of times. On questions, Jenna did not answer, but only joked and rolled his eyes. When it all comes out, she won't care. In the meantime, it was better to keep the affair a secret. At least not to be jinxed, that's for sure. Jenna had a leisurely breakfast, took a shower, put on her makeup, hailed a cab, and went to leave in full dress. She was sure it would encourage Michael to take more decisive action. Like offering to move in with him at last. To work, like a holiday. The managers greeted, raising an eyebrow in mild amazement. Not to work anymore, Jenna informed her, placing the application form in front of her. So you're going freelance, or you've already found a better place? The manager put the application in a folder. You could say that. Jenna smiled enigmatically. She didn't bother with the detentions at her former job, hastily picked up her things from her desk, dryly bade her coworkers farewell, and plodded on out the door. It was amazing the determination that woke up in Jenna at the prospect of a relationship with a wealthy man, and how she dreaded being left in poverty with an invalid husband. Jenna went home, dropped off her things from work. Then you called girlfriend Jenna, and they went shopping together. Enterprising girl decided that a new set of beautiful lingerie will soften the news of her dismissal for Michael. In the evening, Jenna met her lover in parade at his house and informed about her decision. The man was not naively surprised. She had quit. But why? You didn't seem to be busy, and you were always paid on time. Why, Mike? Jenna coquettishly sat on his lap to spend more time with you. After all, a beautiful, satisfied woman, it's better for a tired woman to promise that yes. Well, what makes you think you were? Michael was genuinely perplexed. I felt that way. Jenna didn't like her lover's reaction. An awkward silence ensued. The first to break it was the man. I wanted to talk to you about the May holidays. I thought maybe we could go to the mountains, rent a remote cozy house. How's that sound? The word mountains almost made Jenna squirm. She was fed up with the mountains in her life with Jacob, and therefore, quickly catching her face, the girl with the most innocent voice began to dissuade Michael from his decision. Mike, in the mountains, maybe it's still cold. I want to get warm already, you know? She played with her eyebrows a little. Maybe we'll spend a little more and fly to a place where it's already warm enough. Lying on the beach is better than kicking mud in the woods. Don't you think? But we can do that. The man agreed and reached for his laptop to look for a suitable proposal. Jenna realized she had won. Jacob was waiting for a tea party with the neighbors for some important event. He was also very excited about the return of the weakness in his legs. Had he risen from the ashes of hope to fly again? At least to walk with his feet on the grass. Jacob longed for the paragliding, the mountains of his active life. He had buried it all when he got into the baby carriage. But now there was a glimpse of a chance in the darkness that not all was lost. The man found a folder with the doctor's prescriptions, studied the instructions on therapeutic physical training, and began to exercise slowly. Adriana even let out a quiet tear of joy as she watched her son practicing. She tried to support him in everything, but not to push or nag him. She understood what Jacob had to go through physically and mentally, and that's why she fell behind with questions about Jenna, about motivation, about the apartment. Time will come on its own. Everything will work out as it needs to. The woman sometimes told herself in the evenings 100 nodding visual spokes to each other. At a warm 12 o'clock, mid-April, on the doorstep of the house appeared Frank with Lisa Vida. The hostess was to invite them into the house, but the brisk grandfather waved them away and said that first work, then and race. So he inspected the edge of the roof and got down to business. Adriana fussed around at first, but then waved goodbye and went away to crack the dumplings. Jacob, Vita's tears settled on the front porch area in case a kind neighbor needed to lend tools. That's a cool grandpa you have, whispered Jacob in the ear of the girl. I don't remember my grandfathers. I was little when they were gone. I guess I was lucky. Lisa nodded and smiled as she looked at her relative, diligently tapping his hammer. And yes, you're right, my grandpa is a good man. An example for the whole family. In hard work and optimism, it is noticeable, agreed Jacob. Do you look like him? Lisa slyly tilted her head and looked down at Jacob. She rested her hand on the wheel of the stroller. What was her wait-and-see attitude? She looked at the guy. Jacob looked embarrassed for some reason. Her heart was pounding like crazy. This simple and perky student evoked in him a feeling similar to the first flight under the dome of a paraglider. You are light, witty, and kind, Jacob said in one breath. Lisa as if experienced all the words in turn, and then nodded affirmatively, slightly pictorially, for some reason playfully patted Jacob on the shoulder and laughed. An hour later, vanilla and cherries wafted from the open kitchen window. Adriana, peeking out of the door, called out to everyone, "Yes, throw in that roof, Frank. And you guys, come and eat the dumplings while they're hot." Jacob and Lisa were chatting on a bench near the porch and didn't even hear the hostess' response at once. "What do you want, Adriana, to fill your stomach?" "Maybe people are in the middle of work," replied the elderly neighbor, wielding the flat options. "Grandpa, don't grumble. Let's go. It'll get cold." Lisa gently scolded him. She grabbed the handles of the stroller with Jacob and boldly rolled it down the porch to the entrance. He protested. "Why don't you do it? I'll do it myself. Let me take care of you already." Lisa chucked but did not stop. When the two of them moved to wash their hands in the back of the house, Adriana slowed down late for the youth, Frank, at the threshold and whispered, "There's a flower blooming." "I don't see it," he muttered good-naturedly in reply. "Do you take me for an old fool?" The neighbors smiled understandingly. When the whole company gathered around the table, the plates were already steaming with freshly boiled homemade dumplings with garden cherries, strong tea, and sour cream. So thick that you could stand a spoon in it. A martin was burning under the table. The cat poked its nose on one lap and then the other, asking for treats. Toward the end, Lisa quietly gave the mustachioed Striped and one dumpling. Martin instantly dragged the prey outside with a proud look. "Who is it that feeds the cat from the table?" Adriana was indignant. "Adriana, send them for a walk as punishment," winked Grandfather Frank. Lisa and Jacob looked at each other at the same time. "That's right," the landlady played along. "The weather is nice. There's nothing to sit out. Go and pick a bunch of flowers." The goose meadow was already showing. I crossed, in short, the flag behind the village by the pond. A whole bed came out, and the road to Sokol just Jacob will pass. After the meal, Lisa and Jacob, sensing a trick but not seeing it, were outside the gate of the house and moved leisurely along the path. "Can't you walk at all?" Suddenly Lisa asked, and then she realized she was sorry. "I shouldn't have asked that. It's inappropriate." "It's okay," Jacob answered very calmly. "The doctors say there's a chance, but I can't do it at all yet." At the same time, he remembered the tingling in his knees. Recently, and his exercises began to do gymnastics to restore sensitivity. But sometimes apathy eats away, and you want to give up and accept everything, he shared with the girl. "They say that human possibilities are limitless, and it's all about desire." Lisa looked at the sun and then at Jacob. "And here I am studying to be a marketer, but I want to work with people en masse. I feel it, but I don't know in what way." "That's great," Jacob praised her. "In time, you will surely realize where the pull, and you will eventually get back on your feet." "I know that," Lisa smiled and discreetly touched the man's shoulder. Jacob felt the warmth of her hand even through the thick sweatshirt. It remained there, even when the hand itself was gone. They talked and talked about plans and tourists, about the shortcomings of student dormitories and evil teachers, about the countryside and the city, about the joys of life and far-fetched problems. For the first time in many months since the accident, Jacob felt alive. If his legs obeyed, he would have run, spreading his arms out to the sides and putting his face to the wind. The stroller hit a rock. Alexei threw as the wheel shuddered that Lisa had stopped. Did it hurt? No, he lifted his gaze full on her, perplexed for a secret joy. "I think I can feel my leg." It was from behind the rounded eyes and squatted down beside her. She grabbed her leg just above the knee and gave it a little squeeze. The skin recoiled Jacob, barely noticeable by an unpleasantly dull pain, as if through a pillow. Barely, but withdrawn. Jacob grabbed Lisa's hand. "I can feel her," he whispered. "I can feel her for sure." Lisa jumped up and laughed, then rushed to hug Jacob, a tear streaming down her cheek, either from joy or happiness, or maybe all at once. Jenna was dozing in a chair with headphones on. Michael was sitting next to her, looking at something on his laptop. Clouds flickered in the window, the plane carrying them home from their vacation. Jenna was content and mostly to herself. Abroad, she persuaded her lover to buy some expensive gifts. The arguments were ironclad. "I really need it, and it will be more expensive for us anyway." Michael didn't argue, but he didn't have the joy of gift-giving on his face. Although Jenna was diligently broadcasting to the whole store, shining and kissing the man on the cheek, Mike himself never started a conversation about moving, despite the fact that the girl did not work, but occasionally hinted at the need to find a new source of income. Jenna sincerely did not understand these hints, although he pretended to be a fool. In the end, she moved her things to Mike's house and appeared in the apartment only occasionally. As the couple rested after the morning flight and drank coffee on the balcony, Jenna glanced again at Michael's second car. "I was thinking I might drive. Where to?" Michael looked at her questioningly, carrying his gaze away from his phone screen and work correspondence. "To the store to run errands for fitness." Jenna began to curl her toes and then in heels. "So in sneakers or boots? It's more comfortable." Michael shrugged. "And it's easier than buying and registering a car." "Why buy a car when you already have one?" Jenna nodded shrewdly at the blue foreign car. Michael followed her gaze, wished with his lips, and after a pause said, "The car isn't running. I'm waiting on a new engine for it. Then I was planning to repair it, sell it, and invest the money in a project. And by the way, you don't even have driving experience." "Experience can be gained," Jenna said. "You can always sell it." I like her so much. I could be your sober driver after all. Jenna's nagging skills were first-rate. While still studying to be a translator, she'd realized that it was easier to ask for something than to make an effort and strain herself. And awkwardness can always be smoothed over later with feminine methods. So Michael irritably pressed the bridge of his nose with his fingers. "I don't drink, and if I do, I can call a cab. The car's not running. No one can drive it. When the right model engine comes along, I'll order it. But until then, you better buy yourself a pair of good sneakers." The man stood up, took the mug with the rest of the coffee, and went into the room, signaling that the subject was closed. Jenna hid resentfully. She found the recommendation offensive, considering that pretty shoes and stiletto boots had helped initially win her lover. She wasn't rejected directly, but rather harshly, by the way-remembered patient, kind Jacob, who even though he could not give her a car, but never refused in other whims more modest. A few days passed. Jenna decided not to focus on Mike's refusal and try to talk about the car again. A little later, she pretended to be a diligent housewife, cooked a nice dinner, bought some good wine. The evening passed in a cozy atmosphere. Until Mike suggested watching a new movie, the screen showed the serene life of a family with 2 children. The father was playing frisbee with his son. The mother was teaching her daughter to play the piano. A golden retriever snoozed on the mat. "I always wanted a big family too," Michael said suddenly, "to have a son and a daughter. I started this whole business so that the children would be well off and not need anything." Jenna, who was lying on his lap, was slightly shaken, but she did not show it. So here he is, the perfect image of a spouse for Michael, which he agrees to provide without question. An educated, working mom. Well, no, she's not going to be one. Wasting her youthful beauty on children. When there are so many countries, so many cool options for leisure and self-improvement. I feel sick. The girl jumped up and went into the kitchen, and suddenly it was already in her head. A terrific idea and how to get all the benefits of a lover and not cheat on herself. She opened a bottle of mineral water, poured the falling liquid into a glass, and drank contentedly. The plan was simple and ingenious. Lissa only came to the village on weekends because the rest of the time she had to attend classes. Jacob missed the girl, but tried to keep himself busy in her absence. He was especially reluctant to write a book and do leg exercises. Lissa supported his zeal in both endeavors. In the first 2 weeks of exercise, Jacob was able to wiggle his toes. In another week, he was able to tilt his foot slightly and tense his lower leg. With each new achievement of motivation, it was as if his strength for life was returning. May came, birds sang, tulips bloomed. The bushes and greenery had fresh foliage. Adriana bathed the flower beds loose, the ground cleaned up. Striking branches from a birch tree, there also bowed red, yellow, white buds of tulips. Next to them, crocuses crawled out in a row. At the very curb, blue caps of balloon buds. Martin was hanging around. The cat galloped, tail up, jumped on the brick walls, hunted for soldier beetles that flew out from under the slate. Jacob sat in the stroller by the porch and, covering his eyelids, basked in the sun. Suddenly, someone's hands were on his eyelids. What a thing to do, he stretched out. More playful than annoying. "Lisa, you thought I didn't recognize you." A giggle was heard, then chuckles. "Adriana, I've been sneaking around like a gorilla. I talked Aunt Veja out of it. What's he up to?" Lisa indignantly began tickling Jacob by the ribs. He immediately laughed, shaking off the remnants of his injury. Adriana laughed too, watching the children fool around. When the fun subsided, everyone went into the house to eat cold okroshka and drink jam, dried fruit. At the table, Jacob discreetly put his hand on Lisa's arm. When his mother was busy at the stove, putting on jam, Lisa looked at him embarrassed, but did not take her hand away. Instead, she stroked his little finger with her thumb. How this embarrassment did not take with her usual perky nature. Jacob himself felt like a teenager, as if he were back in college and timidly seeking first dates with cute classmates. Adriana saw what was going on at the table, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she remembered something urgent to do outside, grabbed her head, and rushed out of the kitchen. "Lisa, I have to talk to you." Jacob started when he realized that they were alone. The girl nodded and turned to him with her whole body on the stool. "About what? About what's going on between us?" Jacob sighed and took her hand again. "I like you a lot. I realize that we're not just friends anymore. You've become important to me, and you're helping me not to give up. I realize you don't need Kalenka, but I'm married anyway. Yes, she left me as a useless thing here. But officially, I'm still married." Instead of answering, Lisa hugged him tightly around the neck. "Of course I need you for anything. And I'm sure you'll get out of that damn chair very soon," she whispered in his ear. Jacob's insides warmed. He hugged Lisa in return, at the same time feeling the distinct tingling in his knees again as he pulled her to him. "You're an amazing person, with a good heart and a beautiful dream." Lisa looked into his eyes. "And I care first and foremost about how you feel, not what the papers say." The man smiled and hugged the girl again. "Let's get you back on your feet." Lisa kissed him on the cheek, and then everything will work itself out. Jenna got out of her seat and desperately ran to the restroom. At Michael's surprised look, they had just sat down to breakfast Saturday morning. They planned to drive to a business meeting and go for a walk afterward. "Are you okay?" Michael knocked excitedly on the bathroom door. "Just dizzy all of a sudden from the nausea," Jenna answered, carefully imitating the appropriate sounds. She made some more noise with the drain of the cistern faucet by splashing water on her face and stepped out into the hallway. Michael looked at her with a mixture of joy and anticipation. "Are you pregnant?" he blurted out. "Oh, I don't know. I'll take a test today." Jenna clutched her forehead. What was there to do? Michael picked her up, sat her down on the living room couch, began swiping at her with a folder. "It's clear you're sick of food and your face is all bloomed. And if that's the case, you'll be glad you did." Jenna pulled the most naively righteous expression on her face that she could portray. "Are you kidding? Of course I am." Michael knelt down in front of her. "I've wanted kids for so long, and I applied for a second degree. What's to take back now?" Jenna changed from righteousness to brokenness. "Why take it back? You're a distance learner. I'm paying for your education, so you can work later when the baby grows up," Mike assured her. Yeah, so off to work she went. Of course, Jenna mentally braced herself again. "Okay, I'll go to the doctor tomorrow and find out everything." She sighed, hugging the jubilant Mike. How to fake a pregnancy until the belly appeared? Jenna thought through the nausea, mood swings, dizziness, and bouts of appetite. Didn't seem to be a problem. A doctor she knew, for a fee, could write certificates of confinement for the first time. But then Jenna was going to stage a miscarriage. The only problem was how to divorce Jacob discreetly, but stay living in his apartment. After all, the ambitious woman had plans to marry Mike, but he thought that the apartment belongs to Jenna. He never let her move in with him, although he wouldn't kick his baby mama out on the street. Here was the puzzle, Jenna thought slyly. The certificate was soon obtained. Michael was jubilant, developed a flurry of activity, and was already choosing a name for the future child. He immediately moved his wife permanently to his place. In the evenings, he looked through strollers and cribs, endlessly discussed everything related to children. The girl nodded and herself tried to improve the moment to file for divorce. It remained to quietly finish the story with Jacob, so that it was possible to go to the registry office with Mike unhindered. There wasn't much time left, and every day counted. In the meantime, Jenna was taking full advantage of her position. She was capricious, demanding a personal masseur, demanding a stamp. But in a pickle in the middle of the night, she asked to buy that ring and that purse. Michael performed them all like silk, even made a separate bank card for Jenna. After all, the wishes of a mother and her child were a man's law. And as much as he liked Jenna, he liked her in spite of her temper. Are you sure? Lissa looked at Jacob very carefully. Maybe we should wait. I don't want anything to happen. Yes, I'm sure. Jacob leaned on the armrests of the chair with all his might. It's about time. We should try it. Both were in the living room of the house, on the carpet. Lissa stood next to the stroller, holding out her arms to the man. Jacob began to carefully stand up. At first on his elbows, his legs obeyed, but somehow inarticulate, in thirds with a force that was habitually healthy. Knees, bending as if presented by the weight of hinges, long since opened the door. Heavy. Lissa was eagerly following the boy. It's harder than learning to walk as a child. Jacob wanted to. He put one foot down on the floor first, felt the shaggy pile of the carpet, again like through a pillow, then put the other foot down. Had to make up his mind and let go of the armrests of the stroller. Doubt swamped the mind. Jacob closed his eyes and remembered his first paragliding flight. All around the clouds that affectionately hugged the slopes, overgrown with pine and fir trees. Jacob shook the long-forgotten sensations. He felt Lisa's support and tried to step. The leg was like a stranger's, stricken with a cramp, but nevertheless slowly moved forward. The movement a step through the force, another step. The back remembered what it was like to be straight. Jacob scrutinized his legs, scarred from his many extreme activities, and it was as if he was reliving them all a second time, standing here on the soft carpet in his own home. The man was able to take a dozen feeble steps with Lisa's support and, tired, sat back in the chair. You're doing an incredible job. The girl hugged him. Let's go to the doctor. Let them record your progress. Maybe he'll make some recommendations to speed up the process. The idea is good, but how to get to the city and the hospital? Jacob nodded sadly at the still-needed wheelchair. Grandpa has a car. He'll take you there. Lisa suggested. No, you what? Jacob waved his hands. Frank has already done so much for me. I can't. My conscience won't allow it. Oh, stop it. Lissa threw at him. And that grandfather doesn't understand anything. Yes, old stupid. Jacob was embarrassed. But only if he agrees, don't insist. He grabbed the palm of Lisa, who was about to go to the grandfather. The old car evenly, body motored over the bumps of the rustic country road. Frank spun the steering wheel and talked about the years of dashing youth and work on the collective farm. Jacob sat on the back seat and held a folder with his documents. The stroller ran behind him in the trunk. Lissa was chortling in the front passenger seat listening to her grandfather's stories. It all happened simply, quickly, and completely easy. She asked for it, and off they went. Good thing at least Jacob had time to call the hospital and find out if the surgeon was seeing him today. Well, my little dove, you know how to surprise. Admire the Dr. Jacob after the examination. At this rate, in 6 months, you will be able to run. True, Lisa, who was also present in the office, could not refrain from asking. Of course, this is the first time I have seen patients recover so quickly from such injuries. It's a miracle. Although in scientific circles it is not customary to say so. The doctor pointed expressively at Jacob's medical records, then at his feet. Keep practicing. Develop the previous mobility in all parts of the leg. I recommend that you try walking with support. Jacob drove back almost elated. Confidence was growing in him, and he was sure that very soon he would be able not only to walk, but also to fly again. In such a mood, the man was caught by a sudden phone call. Jacob, hello. Jenna's voice sounded in the receiver. I won't be long. Can you talk? Hi. What's wrong? A lump rose in my chest, and together with the living memories that almost ceased to bother me. I filed for divorce, Jenna informed him briefly. I guess there's no need to explain what and why. You're a big, smart boy. You'll figure it out. Yes, I will, he confirmed his ex-wife's words. Good. I hope it's done quickly. I'll be vacating the apartment in a couple weeks. While Jenna hung up the phone, Lissa heard the conversation. Unlike Gluckov, your Frank. She turned to Jacob and whispered it's for the best. Don't be upset. You said yourself that she was just a formality. You're right, aren't you? The man nodded. Still, I loved that man once. The key word is once. Jenna fairly acted on the armrest of the chair with her fingers. Everything was going according to plan. Jacob had agreed to the divorce, even though he didn't have much of a choice. Michael adored her. The pregnancy legend was confirmed by a certificate. There's a personal bank card with enough money for whatever she wants at any time of day. Awesome. What more could one want? Jenna felt like a queen, in front of whom all those she managed to use in pursuit of the perfect life danced in formation. So that left the girl, staring wistfully at the ceiling, putting a cherry in her mouth from the platter on the table. Left with a car and an official marriage. She replied. Sama herself spit out the pit from the fruit. That's what we'll do today. In the evening, when Michael returned home, the first thing he did was to hug Jenna and stroke her stomach. The girl expected she fed her lover a delicious dinner, poured him wine, and gave him a massage. When Michael got angry, Jenna went on the attack. Mike, you know, I really want the baby to be born in a legal marriage. I grew up in a full family myself, and I find fatherlessness unacceptable. I agreed to that too. Man, I wanted to discuss this issue too. Jenna waiting froze, like a hound who waits for the command to corner the bird for the master. Instead of answering, Michael reached into the pocket of his work case, pulled out a box, and placed it in Jenna's hands. I wanted to make it pretty, but since we're talking, why not? Michael pulled his mistress to him, kissed her forehead. I'll do it. Jenna threw her arms around Michael. At the same time, they marveled at the size of the stone in the ring. They decided to get married in 3 months. By the time of the wedding, Jenna was already planning to get rid of her ex-husband. After the ceremony and banquet, it'll be a week before she fakes a miscarriage. The trap slammed shut in time and securely. We'll have to eat a couple of pounds for the good life, smirked the girl, mentally continuing to listen to Michael's musings about the wedding. Surprisingly, he was almost not interested in Jenna's personal life. Before meeting him, she didn't even remember whether she had told him about the divorce proceedings or not. Apparently, nonsense like an ex-husband was so insignificant to Michael that he preferred not to spend any time or attention on it. Jenna realized it was a good time to push harder. Mike, when the big belly grows, it will be hard for me to go to the hospital and generally go about my business. The girl put her head on her lover's chest. Maybe you're thinking about a car. And so I would take a couple of lessons with an instructor to refresh my knowledge in my head. What do you say? Of course, Jenna's lying. She didn't have anything to refresh her mind because she got her license through a long shot. And it's clear she didn't get it for free. The young lady was not afraid of the road or traffic police or other drivers. Prestige in the possession of his foreign car stuck. Eyes. Possible in your words, and there is a sense. Michael thought for a moment. He put his hands behind his head and set more on his forehead. Jenna held her breath and peered expectantly from under her lashes. Good. Finally, he announced his decision. Only we'll do things differently. I'll sell this car and buy you something more feminine, okay? Sure. Thanks, honey. Jenna let out a squeal of pleasure and started hugging Michael again. Hugging my lover. At the same time, I was thinking about getting a new watch or bracelet in honor of important events like marriage and a car. You should go into town and get that jerk stuff out of your apartment. You've been divorced for 2 weeks now, and you're still at it. Outside, the window smelled of lilacs. June was buzzing with young grass and summer rains. The sun was lavishing light on the earth. Mom, I don't feel confident enough to drive myself yet, Jacob answered, opening a jar of sour cream. Over the past month, the man has made noticeable progress in developing his legs. He could already stand up and sit down with support. He could walk slowly around the house with crutches, without support, walked along the wall, and tried to keep his back straight. Call Lisa, she's in town anyway. Every Monday will help you, the woman advised. Sits down opposite at the table. I don't feel comfortable. She's already here with me all the time, like a caregiver, Jacob mumbled. Adriana put her hand on his palm. Son, that girl loves you. Unlike the town mom, you didn't blow her off. Girls like that are worth their weight in gold. The boy looked at his mother in agreement. Jacob himself realized that between him and Lisa long ago everything and everyone understood. So why did he hesitate and wait for something? Maybe the notorious stroller still does not allow him to step forward, even mentally. A lot of people don't get it right the first time, but that doesn't mean you can't try again. His mother walked around the table, stroked the back of his head, and went out into the room. Jacob ate his soup, then pulled out his cell phone and dialed Lisa's number. Hi. I was wondering if you'd go into town with me any day soon and check out the apartment. The guy spoke, nervously twirling his spoon. For some reason, every interaction with Lisa gave him a pleasant shiver. Jacob was shy, lost, everything spilled out of his hands. Words were jumbled. He couldn't remember anything like that with any girlfriend. Did it mean what his mother had hinted at? Jacob didn't know. But every time he waited for Lisa from school, he got stronger, and the joy of the meeting was brighter and brighter. Sure, let's go. The girl agreed. Are you sure you can already without the stroller? I have to, Jacob assured her. Good, Lisa's face warmed. Voice then be ready Saturday. Very much looking forward to it, Jacob hit the cancel button. It was too soon, and he was so eager to add a whole one. But again, that childish indignation ruined everything. How surprised he would be to find out that Lisa was feeling the same way. Standing in the middle of the institute with the phone in her hand. I allowed Walk to come with you, Lisa blurted out when they were already sitting on the train. Jacob revived in surprise. For the first time, he decided not to take a wheelchair with him and to do with crutches only. Why? Instead of answering, Lisa climbed under his arm and tucked her nose into his side so that Jacob could only see the top of her head. He smiled into the measured, sleepy emptiness of the carriage, closed his eyes, and hugged Lisa tighter. The apartment Jacob hadn't been in almost 6 months was echoed by the familiar turn of the key and the smell. The man breathed it in, standing on the threshold as if hesitant to enter. The smell reminded him again of the time of tourism and flying. There in the closet on the balcony in a case lies his paraglider, next to it in a backpacked equipment, tracker, boots, camera for shooting from height helmet. Jenna's stuff wasn't in the apartment. Contrary to Adriana's fears, she took every last jar. And judging by the footprints in the bathroom, it's recent. They didn't even bother to clean up. Jacob and Lisa ordered a snack from the delivery service and began to clean up. The man tried to do everything himself, but from time to time he still stopped and rested. Lisa quickly put the bathroom in order, washed dusty dishes in the closet, vacuumed the carpets, and wiped the mirrors. You're doing a great job. She praised Jacob when they sat down in the evening on the living room sofa with sandwiches and cups of tea. The doctor was right. You're getting better. I'm too well motivated, Jacob joked, glancing at Lisa. She tossed and dropped the sausage in her lap. I'm very grateful for everything you do for me. Jacob took a piece from his sandwich and transferred it to the girl's sandwich. But the sky really beckons me. I want to fly again and do what I love. I just don't know how. Lisa Moraviova forehead. She knew what had happened to Jacob's partner and to their touring car. Aren't you afraid of hurting your back again? Honestly, I'd go through the whole thing again. Jacob looked at her defiantly. Why? Lisa, perplexed, still bowed her head. To get to know you again. Jacob leaned over, quickly pulled the girl to him and kissed her. Jenna diligently flew around the world to the cafe. At lunch with her friend, they had just toured a dozen bridal salons, looking for a dress for her and her bridesmaids. It was the end of August. All the wedding preparations were almost finished. A restaurant had been chosen, a photographer, a designer, a host hired. Defined the menu and sent invitations to guests. Aren't you tired of belly itching while sipping cold juice from a tube? Asked Jenna. Tired. What can you do? It's a beautiful life. You want it. Jenna grinned. Mike, you've got a tough guy. I'll give you that. Dreamed the girlfriend. Handsome, with money, established. He's got it all. Not like your former test pilot. You don't say, nodded Jenna, pushing her plate away. A man in his 30s, and he's been hiking the mountains. Well, they're divorced now. Forgotten like a bad dream. My girlfriends started laughing. How far along are you? Jenna nodded at her stomach and grinned. The 5th month I'm eating like crazy. I've already gained 3 pounds. How can I lose it all? It's okay, 1 more week and you'll have a tragic drama, Jenna grinned. Where do you get the paperwork for Mike to believe? Whispered Jenna. My girlfriend makes them for me. Jenna replied in her tone. I have to go to her today, by the way. Mike wants the ultrasound results. Paul wants to know the baby. She voiced again, laughed. Genius you are, a woman, Jenka, admired her friend. I did not dare to do such a thing. If you want to live, know how to spin. Jenna shrugged her shoulders. The girls paid for lunch and said goodbye. Jenna sat behind the wheel of a brand new red sedan, and Jenna stayed behind to wait for a cab. Head. Jenna was already at the wedding ceremony, figuring out how her dress would sit on her and from what angle it would be better to take pictures. She ordered an exclusive bouquet of terry pale lilac roses from the florists and anticipated her image with him in such dreams. The girl pulled into the clinic's parking lot. A small documentary formalities. And Jenna was already sitting in the office of gynecologist Katya. A nice lunch was interrupted by a phone call. Joy, where is it? Michael greeted her on the phone. I'm at my doctor's office. As soon as I'm free, I'll pick up my glasses and go straight home, harked Jenna. Oh great, I thought I'd make risotto. I asked if you could have it, because there's wine in the recipe. Michael asked anxiously. Okay, I'll be sure to ask. For now, Jenna jabbed her finger at the screen and slipped her smartphone into her purse. Worried about my pregnancy. She hit her nose and made a quotation mark in the air with her fingers. Well, what are you? Katerina nodded at the memo to expectant mothers on the wall of the office. Would get pregnant really already the right age? Yes, and the man you all have. As they say, would have hired a nanny, and you and the child, and the status. And you're not the boss. Jenna looked like she took a bite out of an unripe persimmon. Are you kidding me? I'm already thinking about how I'm going to lose the whole thing. And if the potbelly did grow, it'd be stretch marks, swelling, and a C-section. God forbid. Maybe someday, but not now. It's up to you, but I would be worried about such prospects, grinned Katerina. So there you needed an ultrasound at 16 weeks. I'll look it up. Who have I had recently with the same dates? She sat down at the machine, then back at the computer, and began to look for suitable data. A couple of manipulations to change the date and last name. Soon the required documents were lying in front of Jenna. The girl gratefully slipped them into her bag, and to Katya moved an envelope. At the wedding, decided already what to go in? She asked. Yes, looked at a couple of options, the doctor replied. Your own we are hot, on them and will spend. General laughter broke out in the office. Home, Jenna drove home in a wonderful mood. She picked up the wedding glasses from the salon, carefully packed them in a box, and was pulling into the parking lot of Michael's house by 7:00 p.m. That's odd. I thought he wanted to make risotto. Jenna turned up her nose, kicking off her shoes in the hallway. The house smelled ordinary instead of Italian. And it was too quiet, no sound of pots rattling or knives clattering from the kitchen. The girl went into the hall and saw Michael sitting in a chair. You decided to order food from the restaurant? Jenna tried to make a joke. Michael looked at her glumly. Give me the car keys. Why? Jenna, perplexed, raised an eyebrow some more. Michael sucked in air with his nose, exhaled. You give me the car keys now, then you go to the 2nd floor, gather all your things, call a cab, and Katusha the hell out of my life. His voice boomed so loud it echoed in every corner of the house. Jenna cowardly squirmed, her eyes shielding her. She tried to open her mouth. Mike, what's wrong? The man stood up and roughly snatched her keys from her, shaved the coma off her shaking hands and handed her his. Doctor, What do I care if she is stripped of her medical practice? Or better yet, sued? Looking into his eyes, Michael said. Jenna collapsed on the carpet between the chairs. Reality rang in her ears, hailing down on her unprotected skin and burning her with the pain of red-hot needles. Michael squatted down beside her, took her chin, and turned her to face him. He'd like to get himself a warmer place at my expense. And with a mop they went out for not disconnecting the call. I, kak nudobno poluchulos, da takaya glupost. To think, Jenna burst into tears of shame. But Michael didn't care anymore. Jenna remembers that night like a blur. She had stuffed things into suitcases and bags in 15 minutes, not even trying to apologize, even though it was pointless. The offended director of the real estate agency made caustic jokes about her, and then he poured wine into his glass and drank in silence, watching the ex-lover frantically packing her belongings. Before he left, he took away all her expensive gifts of watches, jewelry, and brand-name clothes. Jenna walked out of the gate with exactly the same set of things she had come here with a few months ago. Are you ready? Lisa stood in front of Jacob and held his hands tightly. Ready, my captain. The man mockingly put a hand to his helmeted head. In front of them, a locker room or a takeoff pad for paragliding lawyers, and behind it a thunderclap made the fall mountain scenery incredibly beautiful. The slopes were drowned in all the colors of the solar palette from Okru to Pogranitsa. Bushes of wild sea buckthorn, beads of miniature berries shone. The blackthorn did not argue with it, nor did the cherry leaf. Gray-brown stones, as if old wise men soothed the ride of autumn colors. It was the end of September. On the slope away from the site, the last emerald lizards basked and rare butterflies flitted about. When you walk to the landing, don't leave your feet abruptly. About the signal, we'll know it's time. The plan did not drag. At a gust admonished Jacob Kevin, correcting on that straps that grew somewhere only from behind the cradle. William, the instructor who had once trained Jacob, stuck out for the passenger. He won't be flying until next season. I'm in charge for now. All right, stay out of it. Kevin put his palms up and stepped away from the runway with Lisa. Let's go down the slope, and there I'm picked up, William Jacob commanded. But let's go. Jacob gripped the safety harness tighter and rushed forward. Lisa ducked as the foam was caught by the wind and began to rise upward, swaying weakly. Kevin put his palm to his forehead, shielding his eyes from the sun, and dashed his strength approvingly. And good, let's go. Worried about him all the same. Lisa nervously lost her fingers from each other. You drop it. Kevin patted her shoulder. William, we have the best of the best. We'll bring your beloved safely back to Earth. Lisa only glanced at the brightly colored paraglider dome, which had already risen even higher. Let's go to the lower one. They'll be landing there. Kevin urgently mentioned the girl on the airplane ramp. When are you going to fly? I'll wait until Jacob has fully recovered, the latter replied. He's the only one I trust. And anyway, it's so great and amazing and beautiful here. She spread her arms and breathed in the still warm, clean air, but with a hint of fall chill. Kevin laughed. You haven't been whitewater rafting with us or riding ATVs in the mud. There you can feel all the charms of wild tourism. I think that everything is still ahead of us, Lisa smiled back. Of course, we will definitely take you with us if you want. Work, and then we'll send one on tour with people. Kevin the funny man was laughing again. No, I'm only with my husband. Lisa shook her head. So for a lively conversation they reached the lower site, where in the tents found a thermos with herbal tea and sandwiches. A lot had changed in Jacob and Lisa's lives over the past summer. They sold their apartment in the city and bought a smaller place away from the center. And the remaining money they took an old van in good condition. Kevin did not have to be persuaded for a long time. He was happy to return to the company and travel to the mountains again. He only asked for a good insurance policy in case of unforeseen circumstances. Lisa took over the information part of the company, handled advertising, answered the phone, and kept the documentation. Jacob was not yet able to fly as an instructor. He had not yet fully recovered from his injury, but he was happy to tell tourists about the coolest places to visit. Gave a copy of his autographed book to the most curious, But the biggest change was in Lisa and Jacob's relationship. It was now official. There was no lavish wedding, no expensive gifts, no typical dress. The young people signed, sat with their loved ones, and drove off to the mountains. That evening, by the time of the wedding, Jacob was walking with a cane and no longer needed crutches, much less a wheelchair. The doctors only applauded him and called it nothing short of a miracle. It's good to be here again and to be back to the old way. Kevin stretched noisily with a satisfied face. Almost the old way, Lisa corrected him. "I'm sorry." Kevin made a changing gesture with his hand. Suddenly, Jacob's cell phone, which had remained in Kevin's pocket, caught the connection and played a familiar tune, announcing an incoming call. Kevin deftly retrieved the device and brought it to his ear. "Yeah, no, that's not Jacob. What's he flying?" Kevin winked at Lisa, who was interested, listening to this half-hearted dialogue. "How does it fly?" "Yeah, like this. Already recovered." Which I think is an irrelevant question. He's already married and loves her very much. While Kevin put the phone back away. "Who was that?" Lisa asked with curiosity. "There is a star that has fallen." Kevin waved his hand indefinitely in the direction. Suddenly, he jumped up from his seat and shouted, "Fly! Fly! Catch it!" Lisa jumped up from her seat and rushed after Kevin. The two of them, with Valerie's help, brought Jacob safely back to solid ground. He was unhooked from the cradle, and the man was sprawled on the grass, spreading his arms and looking up at the autumn blue sky with sparse powders. "Alive?" Laughing, Lisa asked. More alive than ever before, Jacob blurted out, putting his hands behind his head.